Chapter 28. She pointed to a piece of brocade and said, "This will do." That was a bolt of lotus green colored material. In general, most unmarried females would not choose this material. Because lotus green color was very particular, if a normal female wore this color, it would easily look too old-fashioned. If one did not have an air of nobility, wearing this color would not be able to suppress it and would be very ugly. Chun Rochio's eyes slightly flashed and she smiled. Why did little five pick such a dark color? Young ladies have to wear bright and bright just like your two older sisters. This kind of dark color is too old-fashioned. Correct. Ren Wanyun also followed. Even though she was happy to see the first household's people make a fool of themselves, but this lotus green color was too out of line. If it was seen by outsiders, they would think that their Shun family's young ladies were all old-fashioned. Qinger still wanted to show off her skills at the chrysanthemum banquet, so how could Shen Miao drag her down? Shen Yu and Shen Qing were laughing secretly. Shen Qing said, "I see that this lotus green color is also quite good. Fifth younger sister had never worn such a dark color before. It is also good to try it. I heard that this color is also very noble. If it was not that I have already picked the material, I would also want to try that lotus green color," Shen Yu said with a smile. Li Liang looked at the two D daughters of the Shun family who had a sweet mouth and a sword in their hearts, and then looked at Shan Miao who had a calm expression and sighed in her heart. The D daughter of the first household of the Shen family, Shen Xian, was stupid and ignorant, and everyone in the Ding capital knew that. But who knew that those two Tangjia who looked kind and gentle actually had such a vicious heart? They actually used a method to make Shen Miao look bad. She somewhat sympathized with Shan Miao. General Shen was outside protecting the country, but his own D daughter was schemed against by relatives in the residence. It was really somewhat pitiful. Thinking of this, she said tactfully, "This lotus green color is indeed somewhat too solemn. If it is a chrysanthemum banquet, one might as well choose some relaxing colors. Why not, young lady, choose this jade white one?" Shen Miao glanced at Li Liang. She was a rare honest person. In her previous lifetime she also reminded herself like this, but at that time Shen Miao wholeheartedly believed in her two Tangjia and auntie, and did not listen to her words. Hearing this, she tactfully thanked him. "There's no need, I like this bolt of lotus green material." Her reply made Shen Qing and Shen Yu, who were frowning, to heave a sigh of relief. Shen Yu smiled. Fifth younger sister's eyesight is indeed good. As such, one will have to trouble Lady Li to tailor the clothes for us. Li Nyang sighed in her heart but did not say anything more. He did as he was told and began to measure the young ladies' bodies. From the beginning to the end, old Shen Foreign was reclining on the couch with her eyes closed, as if she did not hear anything at all. As long as it was related to money, she was always happy to pretend that she didn't know anything. Today the clothes and fabrics were all taken out from the public purse, and the money from the public purse was handed over to Ran Wanyun to manage. After they finished measuring the clothes, Li Nyang left. Ran Wanyun then smiled. "These children are all grown-up young ladies, and when our Shun residence's young ladies go out, they cannot be looked down upon by others. Therefore, I made some jewelry for the ladies, and they will be ready for use on the day of the chrysanthemum viewing banquet." As she spoke, she instructed Xiang Lan, who was behind her, to bring out a few boxes and gave one to Shan Qing and one to Shan Miao. Shen Miao's box was heavy. Ren Wanyun looked at her and her tone was exceptionally affectionate. "Second Shen saw that you were busy preparing for Guang Wentang's academy examinations these days, so she made for you when she was shopping at the jeweler shops. It is all according to the best style and hope that you will like it." On the high seat, old Shen Foreign's brows wrinkled and seemed to want to open her eyes, but after pausing, she continued to pretend to sleep. Many thanks to second Shen Shan. Shen Miao also returned the courtesy. Shen Qing and Shen Yu were able to choose their own style and send it back, but they did not bring her along when they were shopping at the shops, and even said that they did not want to disturb her. At the end they gave her a gift and now it was too late to change. "Then let us go back and take a look first." Shen Yu pulled Chun Rochio and winked at Shan Miao. "Fifth younger sister's jewelry must be the heaviest one." Shen Miao smiled gently and did not speak. Upon returning to the western courtyard, Shen Miao threw the box to one side and did not look at it in detail. When Jingzhe saw it, she asked curiously, "Young lady is not going to open it to take a look? What is there to look at?" What is the difference anyway? Shen Miao answered without turning her head back. Jingzhe wanted to speak but stopped. Every time the jewelry that was obtained from the second and third household, her young lady would love it so much that she could not put it down. Unfortunately, even they, as servants, could see that the jewelry was somewhat of a nouveau riche. Shen Miao had been brought up by the second and third household to have an exaggerated temperament, and what she loved the most were these rather tacky gold and silver. Shen Miao thought about it and reached out to open the box. When it was opened, a bright golden light rushed out. Inside were bracelets and necklaces made of gold and silver, and there were even hairpins. The ruby that was inlaid on top was big, but the quality was very poor. Jingzhe could not help but reveal a trace of anger. Shen Miao almost laughed. These things before she married her jewelry were all like this. This kind of gold hairpins and silver necklaces, even the young ladies in the countryside would not wear them. Every time she wore bright-colored clothes and those glittering jewelry, she was just like a moving box. In front of the gentle and graceful Shen Yu and the generous and bright Shen Qing, she was really like a feet-washing maid. Now that these things fell in front of Shen Miao, she felt that it was really ridiculous. Jingzhe observed her young lady and was surprised to find that she did not reveal the same excited expression as before. Just as she was surprised, she saw Shen Miao closing the box and pushing it to Jingzhe. Find a pawn shop to pawn it and buy a silver hairpin on the way back. It does not need to be too good, just an engraved one will do. Young lady, Jingzhe said in surprise, if one were to pawn it like this, if it was discovered by the people in the eastern courtyard, it would be inevitable that it would be used as a raft. Even though she was very happy that Shen Miao finally did not like these gold and silver like before, but this kind of action was still too bold. Since these jewelry cannot be worn anymore, what is the use of keeping it? It is better to pawn it for real gold and silver as it would be more convenient to do things on normal days. Shen Miao lightly answered. One must pay attention to practicality in everything. This was the logic that she understood when she was an empress. The Shen residents would give monthly silver according to the quota, and every young lady would get 2 taels of silver a month. But how much did Shen Yu and Shan Qing get subsidized by their family? Shen Miao did not know, but there was one thing that was certain, she did not have that subsidy. She was clearly a young lady from the general's residence, but she was not as generous as her 2 older sisters. She used to think that it was because second Shen and third Shen were willing to subsidize their daughter, but what about now? The public's money was all controlled by Ren Wanyun, but Shan Gui and Shan Wan usually had to handle matters in court and her own salary was not enough. So how would there be spare money? It was Shen Xian who used his own life, blood and sweat to gallop on the battlefield. Thus His Majesty rewarded him a lot. And these rewards, Shen Xian had never embezzled it and were all given to the public. To take their family's money but treat her like this, only Old Foreign's family would be so shameless. She had to think of a way to split the family. Chapter 29. The 68th year of Ming Qi's chrysanthemum banquet finally came. Guangwentang was different from the past, as the academy examinations became a battle of talents. As long as one had talent, they could casually go up on stage to challenge their classmates. This would show the youthful vitality, and also let others see that the students of Guangwentang had their own merits. Thus the male and female students had to be on the same stage, which meant that it was not like the past where it was divided into male and female groups. If one liked, the females could challenge the males in strategy and archery while the males could challenge the females in the 4 arts. However, it was rare to see such a scene. Early in the morning, the Shen residence was bustling with activity. In the western courtyard, Shuangjiang carefully placed a silver hairpin on Shen Miao's hair and smiled. Young lady, it is done. Shuangjiang was the best at combing hair, and previously Shen Yu wanted to ask her to comb her hair, but Shuangjiang was personally ordered by Shen Foreign to be Shen Miao's maid. Since Shuangjiang was unwilling, Shen Yu could not do anything. Young lady's outfit is really good looking. Bai Lu smiled when she saw it but was somewhat hesitant. It is just that the head looks too plain. Shen Miao's hair was black and thick and was combed into an exquisite cloud bun by Shuangjiang, looking elegant and unique. Even after reaching the marriageable age, Shen Miao still combed her hair into a double ring bun like a maid. With a change of style, it looked like she had grown up a lot. That round and cute face seemed to be delicate and graceful, and finally had some taste of a young lady. There was only a silver hairpin stuck on her head, making her look rather pitiful. Guyu could not help but show anger on her face. This Shun residence had a big business, but Shun Miao did not have a single piece of jewelry that she could take out today. The entire Shun residence was raised by Shun Xian, but they did such cruel and unscrupulous things. But Shun Miao was unable to say anything. Why? It was because they had made jewelry for Shun Miao, and it was only gaudy gold jewelry. If one were to wear it out, one would definitely be laughed at. Shun Miao only took a look at Guyu and guessed what Guyu was thinking and could not help but shake her head and laugh. In fact, since young, the second and third household of the Shun family had racked their brains to cultivate her lousy hobbies, and did all they could to make her believe that those dazzling gold jewelry were the best. In this way, they could say to the outside world that it was not the second and third branches who deliberately embarrassed the first branch's daughter. It was because they loved this kind of glittering gold ornament. Looking at Shun Miao, who was tirelessly wearing those exaggerated jewelry, everyone had this kind of understanding that the daughter of the first household of the Shun residence was greedy and loved money, and was unbearably vulgar. Although gold was good, it was not meant to be worn. Guyu was afraid that Shun Miao would be sad and quickly change the topic, but that Lineage really has good craftsmanship. Young lady's outfit is really beautiful. One did not know if it was because she pitied Shun Miao in her heart, but the embroidery of the clothes that Lineage sent over was surprisingly exquisite. As if taking into consideration that her appearance was on the small side, and that the lotus green color would inevitably be old and heavy, the hem of the skirt was embroidered with large begonia flowers. The flowers were vivid and lifelike, blooming and gorgeous, truly extremely beautiful. Shun Miao also wore it well, and did not look uncomfortable at all. Shuangjiang and Bai Lu looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Now that Shun Miao could even suppress such a heavy color, one did not know what was going on. Let's go. Shun Miao stood up. One cannot wait too long. Just as they walked out of the courtyard, they saw that the begonia flowers in the garden were growing more and more. She stopped her footsteps and pinched a small one and rolled it into her hair bun, like the icing on the cake. Young lady is really good looking, Guyu praised. Gue Momo just came out from the small kitchen and prepared some snacks for Shun Miao on the horse carriage. When she carried the basket out and saw Shun Miao, she could not help but be surprised. She had served Shun Miao for so many years, and Shun Miao was brought up by her milk. It could be said that she had watched Shun Miao grow up, but today she felt that Shun Miao was very unfamiliar. Her temperament was calm and steady, and coupled with that noble lotus green color, it was not an exaggeration to say that she was a princess. She almost did not hold the basket in her hands tightly and just stood there foolishly, until Bai Lu said with a smile, "What is Gue Momo looking at?" Gue Momo was surprised for a moment and was about to say a few beautiful words out of habit when she suddenly remembered that today was the chrysanthemum banquet. With Shun Miao being so outstanding, would it not suppress Shen Yu and Shen Qing? She swallowed the words of praise that were already at the tip of her tongue and turned her head with a worried expression. "Miss, the color of this dress is really too heavy. Miss is so young, why do you need to wear such a color? It will only cover up your good complexion for no reason. Why not go back and take that peach-colored jacket embroidered with magpies? It looks pink and tender. Also this hairpin." This old servant remembered that Second Foreign had bestowed a lot of it. If this goes on, no one would say that the young ladies in the general residence are still so plain. Guyu's lips twitched. That peach-colored jacket embroidered with magpies was given by Ran Wan Yun, and the color was tacky. In addition to wearing gold and silver jewelry all over her face, she looked like a young lady from a rich family in the countryside. If she went to the chrysanthemum banquet today, Shun Miao would definitely be laughed at by everyone. Gue Momo clearly had ill intentions, and just as she was about to reprimand Shun Miao, she heard Shun Miao speaking softly. "Ming Qi is now prosperous and the people are at peace. The common people live and work in peace, but His Majesty advocates frugality. In the ways of the world, extravagance and waste is the lowest, so what is wrong with being a little plain? If others were to see it, they would only say that our general residence is honest and upright. It is a good thing and not bad. As for clothes, there is no need to care about it." Shun Miao's lips hooked up. Today things are admiring the flowers and people are competing with their talents. It has nothing to do with clothes. Her words were gentle and affectionate, yet they contained an unquestionable majesty. Gue Momo's mind was in a mess. She was not afraid of Shen Miao's anger, but when would Shen Miao be able to talk to her with so much logic? Shen Miao usually did not like to do homework and thus did not have a brain. Now with so much logic and so genteel, it made Gue Momo, who was a boorish person who had not studied before, did not know how to refute. Bai Lu could not help but laugh out loud and quickly kept quiet with a solemn expression. It was just that the carefree look in her eyes could not be concealed. Gue Momo could not refute and was even seen as a joke by the few maids. Her heart was annoyed, but she could not understand why in this trip back to the residence, every time she conversed with Shen Miao, she would always be at a disadvantage. Saying that she was sharp-tongued, Shen Miao's tone was very gentle. Saying that she was gentle, every word and sentence made one speechless. Gue Momo was somewhat embarrassed as she handed the basket in her hands to Guyu. This is a snack for young lady on the journey. There is still some distance before the chrysanthemum banquet, so one must not starve young lady. She said to Shen Miao, this old servant will return to the courtyard to do some work. Go. Shen Miao replied lightly. After Gue Momo left, Guyu and Bai Lu were extremely happy. The more powerful Shen Miao was, the more she looked like a master. This way those in the Shen residence who did not know how to read would not dare to bully her. Just as they walked to the door, they saw 2 carriages parked at the door. The first carriage was ready to set off, but the second one was empty. Shen Qing's maid Chun Tao was standing in front of the first carriage. Chapter 30. When Chun Tao saw Shen Miao, she quickly went closer to the carriage and said something to the people inside. Following that, she saw the curtain of the carriage being pulled open. Inside was Shen Yu, Shan Qing, Ren Wanyun and Chan Roqiu. When the 4 of them saw Shen Miao's appearance, they could not help but be startled. Chan Roqiu's eyes flashed, but Ren Wanyun frowned. Little 5, why are you dressed so plainly? That's right. Shen Qing could not wait to speak. It looks really ugly, and it is better to wear something bright. There is a bright yellow new dress in my room. Chun Tao, bring 5th younger sister to change out of that dress and jewelry. Why is she not wearing anything? If one did not know, one would think that the general residence treated you unfairly. She secretly suppressed the jealousy in her heart. In fact, Shen Qing was considered a delicate and pretty beauty, and in addition to her straightforward and generous life outside, she looked like a well-behaved noble young lady. But there was one thing that she cared about the most, which was that her complexion was not very fair and was more of a wheat color. Which female did not wish for their skin to be as fair as snow? She did not dare to say anything about Shen Yu's fair skin, but Shen Miao's skin was fair, and today she was wearing a lotus green dress which made her skin look even more like snow. As a result of this, among the 3 daughters of the Shen residence, her complexion was the dullest and naturally she was unhappy. Shen Yu carefully sized up Shen Miao and saw that her hair was combed into a small and exquisite bun, and when matched with the lotus green dress, she looked very dignified. Today she did not wear those gold and silver jewelry, and even though it was plain, there was a natural and noble feeling. She smiled gently. 5th younger sister, not to mention the clothes, jewelry must be worn. After all, it is the face of our residence, and if Zumu sees you dressed like this, she will not be happy. Moreover, why did you comb your hair like this? You are still young, and the previous double-ringed bun was already very good. Guyu was so angry that her face was somewhat pale, but as a servant, she could not contradict her mistress. She could only gnash her teeth in hatred. This 2nd and 3rd household of the Shen residence all had ulterior motives and did not hesitate to harm their own niece. They could not wait for Shen Miao to dress up as rustic as possible. Shen Miao sneered in her heart. Shen Yu even brought out old Shen Foreign and knew that she was most afraid of old Foreign's prestige. As for combing her hair, Shen Yu was only 1 year older than her, so how could she be considered young? She combed her hair into a flying fairy bun, and her pink gauze dress was as light as a fairy. She wanted to be a peerless and talented woman, so why did she have to be a foil? After they finished, they saw that Shen Miao did not say a word and only smiled at them, not knowing what she was thinking. Finally, Chan Qing felt a little uncomfortable under that gaze and scolded the maid standing beside the carriage. Chun Tao, why are you still in a daze? Aren't you going to help 5th sister change her clothes? No need. Shen Miao interrupted her words and put on a sad expression. There is a reason for dressing up like this today. I like the jewelry that 2nd aunt gave me very much. It's not that I didn't wear it on purpose. The few of them looked at each other and did not know what Shen Miao meant. Guyu and Jingzhe also looked at each other before looking at Shen Miao with some confusion. Father is now far away in the northwest, leading the soldiers in a bloody battle. The Xiongnu have not retreated and the soldiers are clad in cold iron clothes. I am in the capital but am wearing luxurious clothes and eating jade food, leisurely enjoying the flowers and reciting poems. It is really shameful. Shen Miao lowered her head slightly and her voice became softer. Last night there was a bodhisattva who entered my dreams and wanted me to pray devoutly. Thus I made up my mind to wear plain clothes and light colors. Before Father's triumphant return, I will not wear bright clothes or wear jewelry. No one expected that Shen Miao would suddenly say such words. Normally she would not be able to speak clearly in her timid words, not to mention being so particular about her words. Shen Yu and Shen Qing were so shocked that they could not speak. Chan Roqiu stroked her forehead thoughtfully. It was Ren Wanyun who had an awkward expression on her face. Shen Miao's words meant that she was the only one who prayed devoutly for her father. Then what about the rest of the Shen family? But to let her Qing'er wear such plain clothes to the chrysanthemum banquet, she would definitely not do it. Ren Wanyun gritted her teeth and advised lovingly, even so, you are also a young female. Why the need to have such heavy thoughts? Just relax properly at the chrysanthemum banquet. Shen Miao suddenly bowed to Ren Wanyun, begging Second Shen to fulfill Shen Miao's filial piety. They were standing at the entrance of the Shen residence and there were many passers-by. With Shen Miao's bow, the commoners could not help but cast curious glances over. Ren Wanyun could make Shen Miao wear bright clothes to maintain the Shen residence's face, but how could Ren Wanyun not fulfill Shen Miao's filial piety? Her own eldest brother was fighting a war in the northwest region and it was fine if she did not pray but to not fulfill his daughter's filial piety. What kind of intentions did she have? Ren Wanyun's face suddenly turned green. She did not expect that Shen Miao would actually answer like this, and what made one feel suffocated was that she could not refuse. Ren Wanyun quickly let Chen Tao help Shen Miao up and said, "This child, how can Second Shen not fulfill your filial piety? It is hard for you to have such thoughts at such a young age. Never mind, be plain then." Shen Qing was still somewhat unconvinced, but it was not good to refute her mother's opinion. Shen Yu and her daughter seemed to have seen something, and when they looked at Shen Miao again, their gaze was different. But Ren Wanyun smiled. "This carriage of ours is no longer able to fit, so let the housekeeper prepare another carriage specially for little five. It is also spacious to sit in. Little five will follow us in the second carriage, and will enter together later." Every year during the chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Miao would always sit in the same carriage with this mother and daughter pair. It was just one more person, how could they not be able to squeeze in? Today's attitude was just deliberate. Ren Wanyun also had her own considerations. Shen Qing had reached the age to look for a family, but Shen Xian's official position was higher than Shen Gui's, so if there was a high status, perhaps he would first consider Shen Miao. Shen Miao's character was stupid, and as long as there was no one to lead her, one feared that she would make a lot of jokes. Only in this way could Shen Qing's generosity and propriety be shown. Thus she specially prepared 2 carriages. Chan Roqiu and her daughter had the same idea as her and naturally would not refuse. "All right, follow Second Shen's instructions." Shen Miao smiled gently. Ren Wanyun was somewhat surprised as she did not think that Shen Miao would agree so easily. Shen Miao had always been timid and previously always stuck to Shen Yu and Shen Qing. One thought that it would be difficult for her to be alone in a carriage, but one did not expect that Shen Miao did not even raise any objections. In this way, it seemed that her prepared words were unnecessary. If there is nothing else, Shen Miao will go up the carriage first. She bowed to the 4 of them and went up her own carriage. That carriage was considered spacious, but it was not as exquisite as Ren Wanyun's. Guyu said angrily, "It is fine to let young ladies sit alone in the carriage, but to actually let others sit at the back. What kind of intentions is this?" Jingzhe looked at Shen Miao with some worry and sighed in her heart. Shen Miao's gaze was heavy as she looked at the candied plums on the small table, and her hands gradually clenched. She wanted to sweep the first household's face and deliberately widen the distance with the first household, so that she would become a joke and incur Shen Xian's infamy? She would like to see who would be the one causing trouble for who. Chapter 31. The chrysanthemum banquet was set in Yanbeitang, which was not far from Prince Gong's residence. This was a hall that was personally set up by the founding emperor and empress of Mingqi. This residence was originally an exquisitely trimmed garden of the previous dynasty, covering an area of a few thousand mu. The building was grand and exquisite. If it was not that it was too far from the city, the emperor and empress wanted to transform it into a corner of the palace. Even though it was far, it was a good place to enjoy the scenery. Especially in the October of every year, various chrysanthemum flowers would bloom. Because there were professionals who were in charge of planting the precious chrysanthemum seeds. Once it bloomed, it would be like being in a fairyland. And to do the examination here, it was considered very elegant. It would take about 2 hours to drive the horse carriage from Yanbeitang in the Shun residence. Thus there would be some snacks and food on the carriage, so that one would not be hungry. Guyu opened the basket that Gue Momo gave her and asked Shen Miao, "Why not, young lady, eat something? The journey is long and one would only have strength after eating." Shen Miao looked at the things in the basket. Ice goat cheese, green onion rolls, spicy and oily leg. At first glance it made one's mouth twitch. The colors were bright and the smell was fragrant. Unfortunately, the taste of these things were too strong, like the ice goat cheese and the spicy and oily leg. It was easy to stain one's clothes. Gue Momo had really meticulously prepared these foods. The fights between the females in the inner courtyard were mostly done in the open and in the dark, but when Shen Miao was in the inner palace of Mingqi, what she faced was the fight for favor between the concubines, thus the level would be higher. These little tricks could not be put on the table. She shook her head and let Guyu cover the box before asking Jingzhe, "No need. Jingzhe has it here." Jingzhe carefully took out a small cloth bag from behind. That cloth bag was filled with small and exquisite pastries. Shen Miao did not trust the kitchen of the Shun residence, so she let Jingzhe bribe the steward in charge of purchasing and entrusted her to bring some pastries from outside. That steward only thought that Jingzhe was gluttonous and did not do anything, but was somewhat surprised that a maid like Jingzhe would actually be willing to buy Guang Fuzhai's pastries. Guang Fuzhai was one of the best pastry shop in the Ding capital, and even the concubines in the palace loved to eat it. In Shen Miao's previous life, she was not interested in Guang Fuzhai's dim sum, but Wan Yu liked it so much that she would feel unhappy if she did not eat it for a day. At this moment the pastry was only the size of Shen Miao's finger, and was made into the shape of a flower. It was pitiful and cute, so Shen Miao gave some to Guyu and Jingzhe to eat. The two maids first did not dare, but after seeing Shen Miao's insistence, they could not decline and carefully took it over. After eating a mouthful, they were pleasantly surprised. "Young lady, this pastry is really delicious." Shen Miao smiled faintly. In fact, no matter how delicious the snacks were, how delicious could they be? It was just that they were made adorably and exquisitely, and females would always like good-looking things. When Wan Yu first got married, she even spent a lot of money to buy a pastry chef from Guang Fuzhai, only hoping that in the bitter cold land of the Xiongnu, Wan Yu could still eat the pastries that she liked. Who knew that halfway through, Wan Yu would perish and she did not even see her corpse. Shen Miao closed her eyes. Wan Yu's marriage was instigated by Mei Foran and Chan Rochio's family colluded, but the one who gave the order was Fu Xiuyi. In this lifetime, not a single one of these people should think of escaping. She wanted these people who caused Wan Yu's death to be returned 1,000 times and 100 times. Guyu was eating the snacks with relish when she raised her head to see Shen Miao's cold gaze, as if she was a noble foreign in a high position. In a moment, Guyu seemed to see Shen Xian's shadow. Shen Xian was a person who had killed and seen blood on the battlefield, and when he was angry, there was fierceness in his bones. At this moment, Shen Miao's eyes were exactly the same as Shen Xian's. She almost choked on the snack and swallowed it down before carefully asking, "Is young lady uncomfortable anywhere?" "Nothing." Shen Miao's eyes hung down, just thinking about some things. In today's chrysanthemum banquet and academy examinations, Fu Xiuyi would also be present. Not only Fu Xiuyi, there were also a few of Fu Xiuyi's brothers. Now that there were 9 princes, each with their own merits, naturally they would be divided into camps. And Fu Xiuyi's performance was the most harmless, as he was on good terms with the Crown Prince's faction. Who knew that in the end the Crown Prince would be abolished and Fu Xiuyi would be the Crown Prince? She did not intend to help the Crown Prince. These people in the imperial family of Mingqi were the most ruthless. They saw these aristocratic families who helped their ancestors to fight for the country, as if they were looking at an old dog. It was obviously these hounds who helped them to hunt the rabbits, and now that the rabbits were in their pockets, they were worried that the dogs would bite them to death. Thus they squeezed out the last drop of blood from the dogs and then killed them to cook them. The world was not benevolent and the crown prince was not righteous, so why should everyone be loyal? Why not watch the dogs bite each other? Shin Miao's lips slightly hooked up. At this moment in Yanbei Tang, there were already many noble families. Even though today's academy examinations did not differentiate between males and females, the banquet was still divided into male and female seats. At the male seats, the youths and their fathers were busy getting to know each other, as it was natural for the noble families to build relationships and support each other. Moreover, these youths would one day take over their fathers to carry the entire family, so it was good to make more friends. The females were not as frequent as the males, and the matrons would often gather together to chat. Thus the young ladies had fixed good friends. 3 to 5 of them who were familiar with each other gathered together to chat. They were both nervous and looking forward to today's chrysanthemum banquet. Occasionally they would look up at the youths that they admired. Yi Pei-lan fiddled with the fresh flowers on the small table and said, "Do you all have confidence in today's academy examinations?" "I do not." The female beside her smiled. "There are so many people, and if one's aptitude is average, one would be afraid. One only hoped that I would not be picked and that no one would pick me to go up on stage. I do not seek to stand out and just do not make a fool of myself." Yi Pei-lan pursed her lips. "At least one must try. One must know that His Highness Prince Ding will also be here today, and moreover the young master of the Li family that you admire is also here. The young master of the Li family has such outstanding words and would definitely go up on stage. Do not you want to seize this opportunity to perform well?" That young female pushed Yi Pei-lan and her face revealed some shyness. "Nonsense." Jiang Shaoxian laughed when she heard that. "That is right. By way, you must not be afraid. If one wants to talk about making a fool of oneself, there is still number 5 of the Shin family. No matter what, you are better than her." "Correct." Yi Pei-lan also laughed like a flower. Every year in the academy examinations, 5th Shin would be in charge of amusing others. It is hard for her to have the face to come every year. Thinking that this year she would be here to perform her work, I want to laugh. One do not know what kind of clothes she would wear. Would it be like last year's horrifying bright red with a purplish red hairpin? A few young females started giggling. Enough. It was Feng Ning who suddenly opened her mouth. "Is it very funny?" Yi Pei-lan was surprised for a moment before saying, "Feng Ning, you seem to be very strange recently. Why? Have you befriended that fool?" Feng Ning's face turned angry, and just as she was about to speak, she heard someone speaking from the other side. "AI, the Shun family's foreign is here." Chapter 32. Yi Pei-lan's mother, Yi Foreign, had a good relationship with Ran Wanyun, and Master Yi and Shen Gui took care of each other in the official circles. Occasionally Ran Wanyun would bring Shan Qing to the Yi residence as a guest, and Yi Pei-lan had the best relationship with Shan Qing, and was also good with Shen Yu. The matrons present and the male side of the banquet all looked over. Shen Gui and Shan Wan had been busy with political affairs recently and could not come. But the reason why everyone looked over was not because of Shen Gui and Shen Wan. In any case, the formidable great general Shen Exine had high prestige in the court, and when the late emperor was alive, the Shen family had a lot of privileges and was worthy of the title of the Son of Heaven. Whoever had the military power would have the right to speak. Thus, even if Shen Exine was not in the capital all year round, when the Shen family was mentioned, everyone could not help but respect them. Shen Gui and Shan Wan's smooth sailing in the court was also because of their eldest brother's influence. When the males looked at the Shen family, it was because they valued the power of the military, but when the females looked at the Shen family, it was like watching a joke. It was still all right for the Furins as they were older, and even if their hearts were filled with contempt, they would still say a few perfunctory words, but it was different for the young females. Perhaps everyone had a jealous heart. Shen Exine only had one D daughter, and as Shen Miao's D daughter, her identity was naturally different. It could be said that she was even comparable to a princess. And this genuine D daughter of a noble family was an out-and-out fool. Stupid and ignorant, timid and cowardly. She loved Prince Ding Fu Xiaoyi and made a lot of jokes. Unfortunately, the falling flowers have a yearning, But the heartless brook is heartless and everyone in the court knew about it. Not to mention that in front of her two outstanding cousins, she looked more like a country girl. One do not know what kind of good show would there be today. With His Highness Prince Ding present, Shen Miao would definitely dress up meticulously. Yi Peilan covered her mouth as she laughed. Do you not feel that it would be funnier during the academy examinations? With Shen Miao's brainless character, one feared that she would take the initiative to go up on stage. At that time that would be wonderful. Zhang Shaoxian also laughed. Bai Wei sighed and pretended to shake her head. One do not know what Sin General Shen committed in his previous life to have such a daughter. Just as they were speaking, they saw a maid from Yanbei Tang leading a group of people in. The one walking at the front was Ren Wanyun and Chan Roqiu. Ren Wanyun was wearing a golden embroidered long robe. She was already plump and with her hair combed into a bun. It made her look even more noble and dignified, having the air of a matriarch of a household. Chan Roqiu was different. Even though Shen Yu was 16, she was still like a young married woman and wore a light green smoky skirt. With one look, one could tell that she was a gentle female from a scholarly family. Behind them were Shen Yu and Shan Qing. Shen Yu was wearing a light pink dress with a long skirt, and her long hair was tied up into a flying immortal bun with pink pearls. The pearls were of excellent quality and exuded a faint luster, attracting one's gaze. Shan Qing, who was standing beside her, was wearing a peach-colored Rui Cloud mist dress with scattered flowers. It was also a dazzling color. Her hair was combed into a 100-flower bun, making her look energetic and bright. The jade bracelet on her wrist was bright and translucent. Both of them were young. One was gentle and beautiful while the other was generous. The clothes they wore showed that they were of high value and they were not bad. As the saying goes, a person depends on the clothes. There were many youths who cast their gazes over. At the male side of the banquet, Adarin could not help but praise. The daughters of the Shun family have good looks. There is still one more. Kai Lin saw the Shen Yu that he admired and his heart was happy. When he heard that, he could not help but ridicule. The Shen family also has a daughter of General Shun. That is the one with good looks. That Darren did not seem to care much about the rumors outside, and did not know about Shen Miao's comments. When he heard Kai Lin's words, he thought that it was true and said, General Shan's daughter would definitely not be bad. Chapter 33. Oh! Kai Lin could not help but laugh and casually pointed to Shen Yu's entourage. That is not. He did not finish his words but swallowed it back down. He then saw that behind Shen Qing and Shen Yu, there was another person walking. She did not walk together with Shen Qing and Shen Yu and was alone at the back. She should have looked somewhat disappointed and timid, but one did not know why. She did not seem humble at all. Dark gold cloud embroidered robe and crescent moon phoenix tail skirt. The skirt was embroidered with large begonia flowers that seemed to be in full bloom under her feet. As the young female walked, flowers bloomed with each step and swayed gracefully. The young lady was probably feeling cold, so she wore a lotus green cloak made of cloud silk, which instantly suppressed the flowery patterns on her cloak, giving her a dignified air. As she walked closer, everyone then saw her face clearly. It was a young girl around 14 or 15 years old. Her hair was combed into a simple cloud bun, and there was only a plain silver hairpin inserted diagonally. At the end of the silver hairpin was a small begonia, which instantly lit up the dark sky with a touch of brightness. The combination was quite moving. Her complexion was originally fair, and when she wore the lotus green dress, it made her skin look even more creamy, and her eyes were clear and bright like some kind of cub. There was a slight smile on her lips, but it did not seem to be a smile. Her nose was small and fleshy and her mouth was rosy. She looked somewhat cute, but when everyone saw her, they would not think that she was a young female. Some people were born beautiful but did not have any temperament, while some people were not beautiful but their temperament was moving. This young female's appearance was considered delicate and cute, and it would be too much to say that she was a stunning beauty, but that temperament made one unable to help but indulge in it. That kind of majesty and dignified demeanor showed a kind of noble elegance that made one not dare to have any rash thoughts. And the way she walked, her chin was slightly lifted and her skirt did not move at all. The movement of her hands was just right, not stiff nor casual, as if she had done this action 1,000 times and there was not a trace of loophole. This kind of noble temperament and majesty that came from the heart shrouded her body, making her not look like a 14 or 15-year-old young female, but a woman who had been tempered in a high position. Shen Yu Shenqing Ren Wan Yun and Chan Roqiu unknowingly became the background of this young female, like 4 maids that she brought along. And the one walking at the back was clearly their master. Who is that? Yi Peilan muttered. Even as a woman, she couldn't help but be absent-minded when she saw this young woman. How could she possess such a bearing at such a young age? Is this a guest of the Shen family? Bai Wei asked. I have never seen him before. The male side of the banquet was also silent. The way men look at people was different from the way women look at people. The people present were all officials, so they could naturally see the difference between this girl and the others. It was not her appearance but her temperament. It was the kind of calmness that came after going through great storms. Facing everything in front of her, her attitude was noble, but it would make people feel her disdain from the inside out. It was like a leopard running into a flock of sheep, the feeling of being out of place. Is this General Shen's daughter? The Darren who spoke to Kai Lin before had some excitement in his eyes. Really good looks. How magnanimous. The pupil surpasses the master. Xin Miao? Kai Lin was surprised for a moment, and when he fixed his eyes on her, he cried out involuntarily, "It is Shan Miao?" A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone was quiet for a moment, and then instantly there was an uproar. Chapter 34. Shen Miao? Feng and Ning could not help but be startled. She and Shen Miao usually sat at the same table in Guangwen Tang, so naturally she could see more clearly than others. That was indeed Shen Miao. These days, Shen Miao's temperament was much quieter. Even though she was quiet in the past, but she no longer followed behind Shen Yu and Shen Qing and said those stupid and ignorant words. Her quiet appearance was not bad. Feng and Ning thought that Shen Miao had only become smarter and did not think that when she dressed up properly, her appearance would be so shocking. Due to the recuperation after falling into the water, she had lost some weight and usually one did not notice it. Looking at it now, her chin was slightly sharper, and compared to the previous 11 or 12-year-old, she looked more like a 14-year-old young lady. It was as if she was a young beast that had been curled up in its nest and finally revealed its claws for the first time after sleeping for a long time. Pei Xiukai was also at the male side of the banquet. Even though he was only the calligraphy teacher of Guangwen Tang, people respected talented people, and he had quite a status among the officials. He was still young, and with such talent, if he were to enter the court as an official, he would be able to take up an official position. The officials were all smart and knew how to pave the way for the future, so Pei Lang would not necessarily not have a day of prosperity. Shen Miao's eyes swept across the male side of the banquet and stopped on Pei Lang for a moment. She knew that in today's academy examinations, even though Pei Lang was the calligraphy teacher, but during the battle of talents, there was a student who was arrogant because of his talent and challenged the teacher. Pei Lang's circulation of law was brilliant, and it was well-founded, so that day it entered Fu Xiuyi's eyes. Afterwards, in order to recruit this talent, Fu Xiuyi did a lot of courteous actions and finally obtained Pei Lang, this great general. In this lifetime, this matter must not be allowed to happen. Pei Lang sensitively felt that the young female's gaze seemed to be on him from afar, with a sense of scrutiny, as if it was a wild beast weighing the value of its prey, which made his heart feel strange. He followed the gaze and looked back, but Shen Miao had already turned her head away. The Darren around were all exclaiming in admiration. General Shen's daughter is still young and has such bearing. In the future, she must not be underestimated. Her appearance is also not bad. A blue-clad youth said. Why did one not discover that this Shen Miao looks like a beauty? The youths looked at the young female and once again looked at her appearance. Unfortunately, he's an idiot. Kai Lin recovered to his senses after a short moment of surprise. He was dissatisfied that everyone was looking at Shen Miao but neglected Shen Yu and snorted. You are the idiot. An abrupt voice exploded in his ears. Kai Lin was startled. He saw a dumpling dressed in soft red satin glaring at him angrily. He was short, but his aura was imposing. My apologies. The green-robed young man who had rushed over upon hearing the news smiled at Kai Lin in a good-natured manner. My younger brother was rude and offended you. Kai Lin wanted to scold, but upon seeing that the other party was the heir of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng, and that lump was second young master Su Minglang. He swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Su Mingfeng was Xie Jingxing's close friend. Who dared to provoke him? Eldest brother. Su Minglang pulled the corner of Su Mingfeng's clothes. That older sister is very beautiful. You should marry her back to be a sister-in-law. Su Mingfeng's mouth stiffened. Luckily Su Minglang's voice was very soft and no one around heard it. He leaned over slightly and asked, second younger brother knows Shen young lady? I don't know. Su Minglang innocently played with his fingers. Su Mingfeng did not speak anymore. Shen Miao followed behind Ren Wanyun and entourage, and walked to the female side of the banquet. Generally speaking, at the female side of the banquet, the Furens would sit according to their close friends, and it was the same for the young ladies. But Shen Miao would usually be in the Shen residence other than Guangwentang. Needless to say about Shen Yu and Shen Qing, there was no one in Guangwentang who was willing to be on good terms with her. She was not angry or afraid and minded her own business as she looked for a seat to sit down. She was not afraid of the isolation of these young ladies. On the contrary, she enjoyed this kind of quiet feeling. When those young ladies saw that Shen Miao was dressed differently today, they were somewhat jealous and wanted to see her make a fool of herself, so they deliberately ignored her. However, they saw that Shen Miao was sitting alone and did not look miserable. On the table, there were chessboards and leaf cards that were prepared so that the young ladies would not be bored. She thought about it and took out the chess pieces from the chess basket and started to play by herself. She was not proficient in the 4 arts. In the past, it was because of the second and third household's deliberate teachings that she disliked them, and after marrying Fu Xiuyi, she did not have time to learn. So in the last lifetime, when she returned from the Qin country and faced Mei Foran, who was good at singing and dancing, it was not that she did not feel inferior. Those concubines in the inner palace compared her with Mei Foran, and said that she was a boorish person from a military family, who did not know how to appreciate things and was unbearably vulgar. No wonder Fu Xiuyi turned a blind eye to her, the Empress. However, one did not need to know how to play chess. Even though she did not know how to play chess, but for the few years that Fu Xiuyi was in the Qin country, she had studied a lot of military tactics. She did not know how to play chess but knew how to use troops. This was war chess. The noble ladies watched from afar and saw that Shen Miao was calm and composed. That kind of cold and aloof demeanor clearly separated her from everyone else, as if she was above and others were below. Fifth young lady seems to have changed a lot. Yi Foran and Ren Wanyun said with a smile. Seems to have become a young lady. She could not say that Shen Miao was actually better than Shen Yu and Shen Qing, so she could only tactfully remind Ren Wanyun. How could Ren Wanyun not know? She was good at observing one's words and expressions. Just now when they were walking over, everyone's eyes were not looking at her. Nor were they looking at Shen Yu or Shen Qing. It was obvious that they were looking at Shen Miao, who was at the back. She gritted her teeth in her heart. It seemed that Shen Miao had put in a lot of effort this time. Knowing that Prince Ding would also come to the academy examinations, she thought of ways to attract Prince Ding's attention and compete with her Qinger. She raised the teacup and looked at the men's side of the table with a smile. That's right. I'm not young anymore. The old lady loves Xiao. She said that first uncle is not here. Before I went out, she asked me to look for a suitable person. Chun Roqiu's eyes moved. Look for suitable people? Shen Yu and Shen Qing were older than Shen Miao, but they wanted to look for suitable people for Shen Miao. Naturally, it was not because of old Shen Foran's good intentions. Old Shen Foran hated the entire first household, so how could she let Shen Miao have a good life? Chun Roqiu's eyes landed on Shen Qing, who was talking to Yi Pei Lan. Ren Wanyun seemed to be anxious to settle Shen Miao's marriage before Shen Xian returned. Why? Was it because Shen Qing also admired Prince Ding? And to help Shen Qing to remove the biggest threat? Just as she was thinking about it, she heard a commotion from the male side of the banquet. Zhang Foran said, Prince Yu of the first rank is here. Shen Miao, who was holding a piece, paused and the white piece immediately fell. She looked up at the male side of the banquet and her eyes were very calm. Prince Yu of the first rank was the crippled widower that old Shen Foran wanted her to marry in the last lifetime. He was sexually promiscuous and was now 42 years old. If she was not infatuated with Fu Xiuyi at that time, she would have become a skeleton in Prince Yu residence. Chapter 35. One saw a middle-aged man walking over from afar. He did not sit with those officials and youths but sat at a special seat far away. This man was about 40 years old and his face was dark, thin and ferocious. He was wearing a rosin-colored brocade robe, and the accessories were extremely luxurious, but unfortunately he only had one leg. This was the current emperor's younger brother, Prince Yu. Prince Yu was the emperor's biological brother from the same mother, and when he was young, he saved the emperor's life from an assassin. Because of this, his left leg was injured and had to be amputated, becoming a cripple. From then on, Prince Yu's temperament changed greatly. He was cruel and vicious and had a perverse character. He even took in a house of concubines, and outsiders did not know the inside story, but the imperial family knew it clearly. This Prince Yu had some dirty eccentricities, and there were countless women that were played to death by him. Yu Wangfei had already died 7 years ago, and this was very strange, but the Emperor and Empress Dowager were protecting Prince Yu, so the Wangfei's family could only swallow this bitterness. Recently there was a sudden news from Prince Yu residence that Prince Yu had the intention to take in a concubine. For a moment, everyone in the Ding capital was guessing endlessly. Prince Yu's status was rather high, and he was also doted on by the Emperor and Empress Dowager, thus choosing a Wangfei must be of equal status. Those from noble families who truly loved their daughters would naturally not be willing to let their daughters enter such a wolf's den. There were also those who only used their daughters as a bargaining chip, but could not wait to exchange their daughters for glory and splendor, even if they had to sacrifice a life. Looking at the previous Yu Wangfei's family, even though they lost a daughter, did they not become more and more prosperous under the emperor's care? Shun Miao's gaze swept past Prince Yu and then landed on Ren Wanyun at the female side of the banquet. Sure enough, Ren Wanyun's face brightened and said to Yi Furan at the side, "Your Majesty really treats His Highness Prince Yu very well." They were all people who went through many hardships in the inner courtyard, and Yi Furan almost immediately thought of Ren Wanyun's intention. Even though she somewhat despised Ren Wanyun for being too extreme in doing things, but since her master and Shen Gui were on the same line, she naturally had to help Ren Wanyun. She smiled and said, "Not bad. Even though one is older, one would still dote on others." Chun Roqiu lowered her head at the side and slowly ate the snacks, but the smile on her lips was somewhat strange. Dote on him? No one would want their daughter to marry a crippled widower. No matter how much he doted on her or how powerful he was, it would be like pushing his daughter into a pit of fire. As she thought of this, she turned her head and looked at Shan Miao. Shan Miao patiently clung to the chess pieces and placed them step by step on the chessboard. It was as if she did not have any thoughts on anyone else. Chun Roqiu suddenly had some uncertainty in her heart. Ever since Shan Miao woke up after falling into the water, she seemed to have changed into another person. Could it be that Shen Xian's flesh and blood had finally awakened? Shen Xian's entire family had a violent temperament, and if Shen Miao knew of Ren Wanyun's plans, would she obediently accept it? Just as she was thinking, she saw that Shan Miao seemed to be aware of her gaze and raised her head to look at her. That gaze was full of indifference, and it was the golden autumn of the 10th month that made Chun Roqiu's heart turn cold. Shen Miao lowered her head and looked at the chess game. In the previous lifetime, she made a fool of herself at the chrysanthemum banquet, and when she returned to the residence, Ren Wanyun mentioned the marriage of Prince Yu's residence to old lady Shen. Ren Wanyun said, "Little Five's current actions do not have any good points, and even through the Shen family's face. Which noble family would be willing to marry a young lady like Little Five? Now that there is a good marriage in Prince Yu residence, once Little Five goes over, she would be a Wangfei and have His Majesty and the Empress Dowager to take care of her. That is a blessing. Even though her legs are not good and she is older, but our Little Five does not have any outstanding points, so it is not considered a loss for Little Five." It was said in a dignified manner, but in fact it was incomparably vicious. It was only after she spent a lot of money to bribe Rong Jingtang's maid that she got to know of these words. Old Shen Foran's heart already hated the first household. Shen Xian was born from the first wife, and at the beginning when Master Shen was alive, he favored Shen Xian, which made the second wife, Old Shen Foran, jealous. With great difficulty, Master Shen died, but Shen Xian had military merits and could not be touched. Even if she could not touch Shen Xian, she could still touch Shan Miao, and for a female, there was nothing more painful than letting her marry badly. Old Shen Foran and Ren Wanyun hit it off and immediately sent someone to Prince Yu residence to bring up the matter. Shun Miao was angry and afraid in her heart. At that time she was in love with Fu Xiuyi and hardened her heart. That night she brought along a parcel and went to Prince Ding's residence to request shelter. She did not care about her own reputation and deliberately let others spread the matter, thinking that since her reputation was ruined, the uncooked rice would be cooked and marrying to Prince Ding as a concubine would be better than marrying to Prince Yu residence. At that time old Shen Furen was so angry that even though Fu Xiuyi was angry in his heart, he did not treat her badly on the surface. Perhaps he saw the value of the Shen family's military power to him, and even though he was not warm to Shen Miao, he did not refute. Afterwards when Shen Xian returned to the capital at the end of the year, what welcomed him was the fact that a daughter of the Ding capital had eloped. He was shocked and angry, but Shen Miao did not hesitate to go on a hunger strike to protest. At the end Shen Xian had no choice but to use his military merits and finally exchange for the title of Ding Wangfei for her. But no one would have thought that that was the beginning of the real nightmare. Shen Miao closed her eyes. All the mistakes in her past life seemed to start from today, and today was destined to be the turning point of her life. Those who owed her, now all start to prepare to repay the debt. Hey, what is there to play alone? A voice suddenly rang beside her ear. Feng and Ning did not know when she walked in front of her and there was some awkwardness on her face as she sat opposite her. Why not play a game of chess with me? But do you know how to play chess? Feng and Ning lowered her head to look at the chessboard. It was originally an unintentional casual remark, but with one look, there was some interest. After looking carefully for a while, she was unable to see any reason, so she asked, "What kind of game is this? I have never seen it before." "This is not playing chess." Shen Miao smiled. "This is fighting a war." "What? One cannot see it now." Shen Miao said lightly, "This kind of chess, one can only see it at the end when the pieces are swallowed. It was like a net, firmly and tightly covering, one would not be able to escape." Feng and Ning shivered. "What are you talking about? It is so creepy." She looked at the male side of the banquet and suddenly her eyes brightened as she looked at Shen Miao mischievously. "Look, His Highness Prince Ding has arrived." At the male side of the banquet, Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi was wearing a blue robe embroidered with golden pine trees, green boots and jade crown, looking very impressive. He was born handsome and his bearing was rather cold, but his actions were amiable, and did not seem to have the arrogance of a high and mighty prince. Along the way, it would cause the female side of the banquet to exclaim. Shen Miao lowered her head and clenched her fists into her palms. 10 years of companionship and wholeheartedly support, in exchange for a white silk and a blood debt for the entire family. Even a pair of children had lost their lives because of this. This person looked kind on the outside, but his heart was vicious. He looked fair on the outside, but in reality he was ruthless. In the previous lifetime this person granted her an intact corpse. In this lifetime she wanted this person to die without an intact corpse. Fu Xiuyi Bengong is back. Chapter 36. At the male side of the banquet, other than Prince Ding, there were only 2 princes, Prince Zhou Fu Xiuan and Prince Jing Fu Xiuxian. The crown prince's health wasn't good, so he wouldn't participate in such an occasion. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing were born from consort Su Xian, and both of them had outstanding talents. Prince Zhou was extroverted and arrogant while Prince Jing was reserved but shrewd. These 2 people were also eyeing the emperor's throne covetously. Everyone knew that the crown prince's health was weak, and there would be a day when the emperor would appoint a crown prince instead. Consort Su Xian was already deeply favored by the emperor, and in contrast, Prince Ding's mother, Consort Dongshu, was much more low-key. If it was not that Prince Ding was considered outstanding, one feared that the position of the 4 consorts would not be stable. In the last lifetime, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing were involved in the fight for the throne but relaxed their vigilance towards Prince Ding. Firstly, Fu Xiuyi and the crown prince had a good relationship and was always with the crown prince. He even personally searched for precious medicinal herbs for the crown prince. Thus the empress was very satisfied with Fu Xiuyi. Thus the rest of the people felt that Prince Ding was just a follower of the crown prince. Secondly, Fu Xiuyi was usually aloof and disdained to participate in the matters of the court. In addition, Consort Dongshu had a cautious temperament and spent all day chanting Buddhist scriptures, and without the support of a strong maiden family, one expected that Prince Ding would not be able to stir up any waves. But in fact, the one who finally sat on the dragon throne was Fu Xiaoyi, who they thought would not be able to stir up any waves. Shen Miao picked up the leaf card and played with it. Just like this leaf card, Fu Xiaoyi's cards were very bad from the moment he was born. Everyone thought that he would be eliminated from the start, but they did not know that he had never thought of using the cards in his hands. His cards were in the hands of others, and what he had to do was to snatch them. Why aren't you reacting? Seeing that she was silent and there was no love for Fu Xiaoyi in her eyes, Feng and Ning felt somewhat strange. Don't you like him? Shen Miao raised her head and looked at her. Feng and Ning was shocked. That sharp gaze made her heart turn cold and she almost could not resist the urge to kneel down. She did not know where her feelings came from, but she instinctively knew that her words had made Shen Miao unhappy. She paused and said, "Actually, I don't really like him. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? It doesn't seem real." This time, Shen Miao looked at Feng and Ning seriously. She didn't expect that this arrogant and willful young miss of a big family could see through this. There were many people who were infatuated with Fu Xiaoyi's appearance. As long as Fu Xiaoyi was willing, all the young girls would fall for him. "What, there's actually a maverick?" she slowly said. "Looks like you have someone in your heart." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Feng and Ning's small face suddenly flushed red. "Do not falsely accuse a good person." Shen Miao did not speak to her anymore as she did not have the mood to inquire about a young lady's thoughts. She naturally had her own matters to attend to. The invitations for the chrysanthemum banquet were almost all received, and everyone should have arrived. Under the chrysanthemum field of Yanbei Hall, a huge platform was set up. This kind of stage dressing did not make people feel that it was vulgar. This was because the late emperor had once offered sacrifices to the heavens here. It was a high platform that was tainted with the aura of a true dragon. There were chess pieces stuck on both sides and there were soldiers dressed in ceremonial attire with a red scarf on their head beating the drums loudly. The drums rumbled through the sky and the musicians played the zither. It was a song of virtuous scholar, implying that the imperial family was thirsty for talents. Today's academy examination was to select the virtuous talents for Mingqi's country, and to select the true talents of the country. The music and drums entered the ears with a unique excitement and magnificence that made one involuntarily surge. Most of the people present were youths and it was the time when they were filled with hot blood. They almost followed the music and could not wait to show all of their talents in front of everyone to have a good future in Mingqi, and to leave a thick stroke in the history of the Mingqi's imperial family. Even if they were females, they could not help but reveal an excited expression. Even though they could not enter the court and become officials like males, their fathers and older brothers were the pillars of the country. Their own family was indomitable and under the glory. They were also bathed in the imperial family's favor, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. While the entire audience was shrouded in the excitement of the imperial benevolence, there was only one person whose eyes were cold and did not have a trace of emotion. Shen Miao's gaze landed on the person who was playing the zither in the center. The Mingqi imperial family loved to be like this, to evoke the youth's heart to serve the country, and use them to work for the decadent imperial family. However, at the end, once the country was stabilized, these men who shed their blood for the country would rarely have a good ending. When the cunning rabbit dies, the hound is cooked. Every time a new emperor took office, the old people would be eradicated. Especially those officials who had experienced the dark fight for the throne, and had seen the imperial family's dirty deals and bloodshed. How would the imperial family feel assured to let them rise up step by step? These stirring music would only become a funeral song in the future. And these youths who were immersed in the heart to serve the country would only die under the treacherous infighting of the imperial family in the future and become innocent victims. She could not save the people of the world but could save her own people. Shen Miao gently raised her hand and the corner of her right sleeve brushed past the edge of the table, and that bowl of clear tea was swept onto the floor. With a pot sound, a clear and crisp sound rang in the venue. It should not be heard, but compared to the rhythmic music, it was as if one of the silk threads was pulled up and messed up the other threads. With a pung sound, the rhythm of the music was disrupted. Like waking up from a dream, Feng and Ning suddenly recovered to her senses and saw Shen Miao picking up the teacup on the floor and smiled gently. "Apologies, my hand slipped." That musician who was playing the intense rhythm on the stage and plucking the zither felt his brain explode and almost fainted from the pain. This kind of music was learned by Ming Qi from an imported Westerner, and most likely had the intention of bewitching. It was able to stir up the emotions in one's heart, and this song was a war song. It was able to greatly amplify the fighting spirit and loyalty in one's heart. If the song was finished, some of the loyalty would turn into blind loyalty. The horror of this music was only seen after Shen Miao became the Empress. The imperial family of Ming Qi used this kind of music to confuse the younger generation, and let these younger generation shed their blood for them. At the beginning, when the Xiongnu invaded, the imperial family let a large number of the imperial army guard the capital, and when they recruited new soldiers to the borders, they let these musicians play the drums on the stage. A large wave of youths joined the army without looking back, and some of them were not even of marriageable age. After being interrupted by Shan Miao, those musicians became weaker and weaker, and the final sound of the zither was no longer as impassioned as before. It was just an ordinary playing. And those bewitched hot-blooded feelings gradually dissipated and everything returned to its tranquility. But Shen Miao's actions had attracted some people's attention. At the male side of the banquet, Fu Xiuyi and Pei Lang looked over at the same time. Chapter 37. Fu Xiuyi was a member of the imperial family, and naturally knew of the imperial family's means. The crisp sound of the teacup falling to the ground seemed to be inadvertent, but it had already disrupted the rhythm of the musicians on the stage, and those bewitching tones could not continue. He naturally wanted to see who the culprit was. Fu Xiuyi himself had a cautious and suspicious character, so he did not think that the other party did it unintentionally. The purple-clad young female was holding her chin and talking to the person beside her. Her expression was cold and distant, but there was an indescribable bearing that clearly separated her from the people around her. Who is ninth younger brother looking at? Prince Zhou. Fu Xiuan followed Fu Xiuyi's gaze and revealed a knowing smile. Speaking of the few of us brothers, only ninth younger brother has not married. Did imperial father not mention many times about ninth younger brother's consort selection? That young lady looks like a young lady from which residence? She looks not bad. One do not know whose relative she is. Is there anyone who knows her? It is the fifth young lady from the formidable great general residence, this one student. Pei Lang was standing not far away and answered when he heard it. The fifth young lady from the formidable great general residence? Prince Jing. Fu Xiuan's memory was not bad. Perhaps it was because Shen Miao's name was too big that even the imperial family were not unfamiliar with her name. He said, "Isn't that Shen Exine General Shen's daughter? Seems to be called Shen Miao? How could it be Shen Miao?" Fu Xiuan smiled without a care. The matter of Shen Miao chasing our ninth younger brother is known by the entire capital. Did not she fall into the water a few days ago because of ninth younger brother? If ninth younger brother really likes Shen Miao, why would it be so troublesome? Moreover, Shen Miao is an idiot. You see that young lady opposite? She has a calm and noble temperament. How could it be Shen Miao? Fourth older brother, be careful with your words. Xiuyi does not have such intention. Fu Xiuyi shook his head, but his eyes were looking at the purple-clad young female at the female side of the banquet. It was not that his heart was not shocked. What kind of person was Shen Miao? In his eyes, she was no different from those young females who admired him. Those young females who admired him would at least pretend to be reserved on the surface and knew some etiquette. As for Shen Miao, other than looking at him foolishly, she did not know anything else. Naturally, he would not look at an idiot who was the joke of the entire Ding capital. If it was not for Shen Xian's face, he would definitely clearly show his disgust. In his memory, Shen Miao always loved to wear bright red and green clothes and loved gold accessories. She would ferociously smear rouge and powder on her face, just like a clown on a stage, and it was even a stage in the countryside. And the purple-clothed young lady in front of him had creamy skin, graceful eyebrows, and an air of nobility that clearly distinguished her from the surrounding women. How could it be Shen Miao? He was not the only one who was confused. Pei Lang was also confused. As Shen Miao's teacher for 2 years, Pei Lang undoubtedly understood Shen Miao more than Fu Xiuyi. If one's appearance could be changed and clothes could be adjusted, the temperament of one's body would be different. Pei Lang was a scholar, and a scholar valued one's temperament more than others. Shen Miao seemed to have changed into another person overnight, so how could there be such a thing? He didn't think about the teacup just now. Although he also felt that there was something wrong with the music in his heart, how could a little girl hear the problem in it? Moreover, Shen Miao was never an expert in zither skills. Everyone had their own thoughts, but the musician on stage had already finished. The academy examinations were about to begin. This year's academy examinations was different from the previous years. There was no differentiation between male and female, only civil and military. Even though Guang Wentang required the students to be proficient in both the pen and the sword, but the rules had always been like this for 100 years. There were very few females who chose the sword, and in the literary category, it was basically the males who chose the sword. This was because these three subjects were actually ways for the court to select talents. Just like Adarin once said, in the examination of Jinshi, one would usually be a general or minister and would be extremely well known. In the military category, one would need to test riding, shooting, spear, weight-bearing, and so on. But after all, it was not a real military examination, so there was no need for military drills or a specific arena. Most of the females would be tested in the 4 categories of poetry, song, and literature, and this was a tacit tradition. Even if Mingqi was considered to be open, it was much harsher towards females. It was not only Mingqi, almost all the countries were like this. Females should stay at home to support their husband and teach their children. Singing the Wind and the Moon. Mingqi's academy examinations had always been divided into 3 parts: drawing, selection, and challenge. Everyone had to draw, and the examiner would mess up the order, and the situation of the drawing would determine what each person would draw for the academy examinations. In order to avoid drawing something that was too difficult, the females would draw from the 4 categories of literature while the males would draw from the military and literature categories. Because this was one of the unavoidable categories, Shen Miao would lose face in this category every year because she did not know any of the 4 categories of poetry, song, and literature. As for selection, it was the second stage. One could choose a category that one was good at to go up on stage to display, just like how Shen Yu often chose to play the zither and Shen Qing chose to calculate. As for the last part, it was challenge. This challenge was not selection but a challenge. Some people could go up on stage and randomly pick a student to be their opponent and compete in one of the categories. This kind of situation would often happen in a situation where the opponent was evenly matched. For someone like Shen Miao, challenging her would be an insult to one's own strength. But there were also those who wanted to see Shen Miao become a joke and deliberately picked Shen Miao to go up on stage to compare in one category. Naturally, there was no need to guess the outcome. No matter which category, Shen Miao would suffer a crushing defeat. So to Shen Miao, the academy examinations every year was a nightmare, and every year she would be treated as a joke by everyone. There were countless of such days. And it was the same this year. The main examiner on stage pretended to say something as usual, and the other 2 people took out 2 small wooden buckets from the back. The wooden buckets were filled with lots of paper. On these papers were the categories of the academy examinations, which were drawn by the students themselves. Both males and females would have to draw, and one of them walked over to the male side of the banquet and handed it to the male students. Another tall female took the bucket and walked over to the female side of the banquet and let the female students draw according to the order. Feng and Ning blinked her eyes. May the heavens bless me. I only hope to draw the zither and literature categories. I really do not know anything about painting and chess. She looked at Shen Miao. You do not seem to be worried at all. Could it be that you have a card up your sleeve? Or are you just smashing a broken pot? It was not that her words were harsh, but Shen Miao was indeed a fool who did not know anything. Shen Miao declined to comment. Was there any meaning in drawing? She did not know anything about the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. When the wooden buckets were passed to Shen Miao's table, Feng and Ning first drew, and after drawing the lot paper, she could not wait to open it and immediately gave a sigh of relief. It is zither. It is zither. This is great. These few days of zither practice were not in vain. Shen Miao, what is yours? Shen Miao's hand had just withdrawn from the bucket, and there was a white piece of paper in her palm that was folded into a long strip. She opened it and there was a word inside. Painting. Chapter 38. Painting. Feng and Ning stretched out her neck, and when she saw the paper in Shen Miao's hands, she was slightly surprised before saying, Do you know how? This was the truth. Shen Miao was not proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. Not to mention the charm of a painting, one could not even draw it well. Seeing that Shen Miao did not speak, Feng and Ning also quietened down. Most likely people were very strange. Initially she did not see eye to eye with Shen Miao, but now that Shen Miao was cold to her, Feng and Ning was more willing to talk to Shen Miao. She felt that the current Shen Miao had a special temperament that unconsciously attracted others to get close. Both of them were silent when they saw Shen Yu and Shen Qing walking over. Shen Yu smiled. What is the paper in fifth younger sister's hand? Let me take a look. Perhaps eldest sister and I can think of some ideas. Shen Qing nodded her head, correct. Second younger sister and I have drawn books and paintings respectively. What is yours? Shen Miao did not speak. Shen Yu smiled as she went forward to take the paper in her hands and said unintentionally, Fifth younger sister need not be afraid. There are still us two sisters around and will take care of you. Feng and Ning snorted from her nose. Even though she did not like Shen Miao in the past, she also did not see eye to eye with Shen Yu and Shen Qing. Her mother was a powerful one and there were many sisters in the family, thus one could see who was harboring evil intentions and who was scheming in a glance. What was the difference between Shen Yu and Shen Qing, and those Shu sisters in their residence who wanted to fight for favor? It was nothing more than using Shen Miao's stupidity to set off themselves. Sure enough, when Shen Yu's words came out, Yi Peilan, who was at the side, sneered, Shen Yu, why are you saying these to her? Even if you come up with good ideas, one fear that she would not be able to handle it. Exactly. It is better to let Shen Miao prepare carefully. Jiang Shaoxian also smiled. Their blatant ridicule was heard by the surrounding Furins and young ladies, but they pretended not to hear it. On the surface, they looked serious, but the corners of their lips curled up. There was no other reason, as Shen Miao would be a joke in the academy examinations every year, and when it became a habit to be ridiculed, there was no difference. Even if such ridiculing behavior should not appear on the noble children. Do not say that about fifth younger sister. Shen Yu disagreed. Fifth younger sister is also very diligent. She opened the paper and exclaimed Aya before looking at Shen Miao in surprise. It is a painting. Fifth younger sister, you and I have drawn the same item. Feng and Ning looked at Shen Yu incomprehensibly. It was only the same item, what was there to be surprised about? Shen Miao, however, was well aware of it. Most likely Shen Yu felt that her stupidity would be able to set off her outstanding elegance, not to mention that Fu Xiaoyi was present today. Thinking of Fu Xiaoyi, her eyes darkened. What does fifth younger sister intend to draw? Shen Qing asked curiously. Do you want second younger sister to give you some pointers? Her words were full of kindness and vividly portrayed the image of a big sister who loved her younger sister. If others were to see this, they would only say that Shen Qing loved her cousin very much. Troubling both of you to worry, Shen Miao coldly said. But since it is the academy examinations, it is better to abide by the rules. Second sister wants to help me, isn't that cheating? The two people who cheat will be expelled from the academy examinations together. Second sister wants to go to such an extent for me? When her lukewarm words came out, Shen Yu's expression changed. Yes, this kind of behavior was considered cheating, but if it was in the past, everyone would only say that she was kind and friendly and would not put much thought into it. But after being specially pointed out by Shen Miao, everyone's gaze towards Shen Yu changed. In the academy examinations, one more person meant one more opponent, and everyone wanted to dominate the limelight. Shen Yu was on good terms with everyone in Guangwentang, but it did not mean that there were no people who were jealous of her. All the young females present were her opponents, and every year in the academy examinations, Shen Yu would always be the first in the females' side, so there would definitely be resentment. If one could catch her weakness and let her off the stage and not participate in the academy examinations, then there would be one less strong opponent. Suddenly, those female students who were originally standing at the side with Shen Yu looked over covetously, including Yi Peilan and entourage who were on good terms with Shen Yu. Shen Yu shuddered as she naturally knew the pros and cons, turning her head back. She saw Shen Miao looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and her eyes were full of ridicule. If she were to shrink back like this, it would seem that her good intentions were fake, and if she were to take advantage of the situation, it would be hard to guarantee that these students would not grab hold of her weakness to not participate in the competition. Either way, it would be wrong. Xunyu suppressed the resentment in her heart and looked at Shan Miao before reluctantly smiling. Since fifth younger sister has said so, then I would not dare to have good intentions on my own. Forget it. Feng and Ning could not help but laugh and deliberately said loudly, one thought that one dotes on younger sister a lot. So it is just like this. To be scared by others and forget it, then what kind of sincere help is that? For a moment, those young females looked at Xunyu with a meaningful gaze. Chan Roqiu also heard the movements over here, and she was somewhat flustered. Xunyu was after all still young, and did not know how to deal with the situation in front of her. At the same time, her heart was somewhat cold. This Xun Miao was able to stir up other people's emotions with just a few words, and let others follow her words. Such a powerful mouth. But she could not intervene as it was a child's matter, and if she as a mother were to intervene, then she would be at a disadvantage. Ren Wanyun and Shanqing were somewhat gloating as one knew that if Xunyu was too outstanding, it would cover up Shanqing's brilliance. If Xunyu did not end up well, then only Shanqing would be able to support the Shun family. Xunyu looked at Shan Miao and thought that if this younger sister had become smarter, she would also speak up for her at this moment. After all, they were all sisters in the Shun residence, and if it was spread out that the Shun residence was in discord, what good would it be? Moreover, Shun Miao had always been fawning on Xunyu, and if Xunyu was offended, then Shun Miao would no longer have any friends. But after waiting for a long while, she did not hear Shun Miao's reply. Xunyu could not help but speak. Fifth younger sister. Does second older sister not need to think about what to draw next? Shun Miao's voice was flat. As for my side, there is no need. Seeing that Shan Miao did not have the intention to help her out of the predicament, and looking at the ridiculing gazes of the surrounding young females, for the first time, Xunyu almost could not control herself and wanted to give Shan Miao a tight slap. She barely suppressed her emotions and gritted her teeth. It seems that fifth younger sister seems to have a well-thought-out plan. Since that is the case, later one will see how fifth younger sister will display her brilliance. It will definitely be extremely wonderful. Xunyu bit on the words extremely wonderful very heavily. Finishing saying that, she flicked her sleeves and turned to leave in a huff. Shanqing hurriedly followed after him. Feng and Ning looked at Shan Miao and asked, even though it is extremely refreshing, but why did you not leave a way out for yourself? When you go on stage, she will definitely grab the opportunity to ruthlessly ridicule you. I do not like to endure. Shan Miao looked at the chess game in front of her. Do not endure, do not turn back, do not be soft-hearted. Do not endure. Kill. She took out a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard. Chapter 39. The examiners in charge of the academy examinations were already standing on the stage, and the female teachers who were holding the lots had already recorded their respective items as they were to be tested in groups. First was the female group, the 4 categories of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Among the students of Guangwentang, the first-level students did not need to go through the academy examinations, and only the second and third-level students. The third-level students were in the next group, and this group of second-level students were only 20 over people. The females that came to Guangwentang were the daughters of noble families in the capital, and Shu daughters naturally did not have the qualifications. Among the D daughters, there was no lack of teachers that came to the residence to teach. Moreover, the threshold for entering Guangwentang was not low, and every year they had to pay 1,000 taels of silver. Initially, Shenxian did not care about these worldly possessions, and sent the 3 daughters of the Shun residence to Guangwentang. Ren Wanyun was somewhat dissatisfied with this, but with a wave of Shenxian's hand, she did not dare to continue to argue. After all, the money that was confiscated was the emperor's reward for Shenxian's battles. The 22 people were divided into 4 groups. There were more people in the zither category, and there were 7 people. Females always liked these kinds of things that could highlight their charm, and the other 3 categories had 5 people. In the painting group that Shan Miao was in, there was Xunyu, the left imperial censor's D-daughter Qingqing, Fan Luer of the Fengtian residence's magistrate, and Zhao Yan of the left assistant minister's family. Fan Luer and Zhao Yan were somewhat disappointed. Fan Luer was good at the zither category and Zhao Yan was good at chess. Not everyone was like Xunyu, who was proficient in every category. Not being able to draw the category that they were good at, Fan Luer and Zhao Yan were not very happy in front of the males. It was Qin Qing who was as arrogant as usual. Qin Qing's beauty was the only one in Guangwentang who could compete with Shen Yu, but it was not because of talent. Even though Shen Yu was also gentle and beautiful, Qin Qing's beauty could suppress her without batting an eyelid. Shen Miao's gaze landed on Qin Qing. Today she was wearing a green cotton embroidered robe with wide sleeves, and there was a goose yellow belt around her waist which made her slender waist less than a grasp, and the fluttering of her clothes made her look like a fairy. Compared to the soft and weak Shen Yu, she was more like a lotus. However, this arrogant and beautiful woman followed the late emperor and began to clean up the aristocratic families. After the left imperial censor's family was defeated, she became a prostitute for the army. Later, it was said that she took a knife and died together with a small general in the army camp. Seeming to have sensed Shen Miao's gaze, Qin Qing looked over with some surprise before turning his head away in disgust, as if he was unwilling to look at Shen Miao. Shen Miao did not bother about it, but it was Feng Aning who was standing beside her who pulled the corner of her clothes. At that time, you just draw casually and do not think too much. Feng Aning's thoughts were simple. She would eventually make a fool of herself, and to make a fool of herself in such an open manner would make others feel bored. But if Shen Miao did something out of line on the stage in order to fight for her pride, that would be a big problem. Shen Miao nodded. The official on the stage banged the drum heavily, signaling the start of the academy examination. The first thing to compare was Qin. It could be considered as Feng Aning's good luck, as the female students who drew Qin today had mediocre skills. Coincidentally, those who played the zither the best didn't get this category. For no reason, Feng Aning picked up a bargain. And Feng Aning's recent days of hard work in the zither skills was finally not in vain. When she was sitting upright, there was a bit of a virtuous lady style, and in addition she was good-looking. The zither sound was faint, and compared to the previous few mediocre zither skills, it was like a gust of wind that blew on one's face. There was a blue-clad youth at the male side of the banquet, lingering for 3 days. When Kai Lin heard it, he kicked that youth unhappily. What is this considered as? That is because one did not see Yuer's zither skills. If Yuer were to play a song, even the fairies from the 9 heavens would not be able to compare. Inexperienced. Kai Lin had always protected his sweetheart, but when Su Minglang heard his words, he curled his lips in disdain and seemed to want to say something, but when he saw his eldest brother's warning eyes, he held it in. The Qin category quickly finished, and the few examiners on the stage began to discuss and judge. After the Qin category was over, it was the chess skills. The process of the chess skills was much simpler. 5 people would play against each other, and one game would be the winner, and the score would be given based on the playing style and style. In this category, the winner was Yi Pei Lan. After the chess was the book category. Shun Qing, Bai Wei and Zhang Xiaoxian were in the same group. These 3 people were good friends on normal days, but in the academy examinations, the atmosphere was rather tense. This time the book was to compose a poem with today's chrysanthemum as the topic. One reason was to look at the calligraphy, and the other was to look at one's talent. Shun Qing's best skills were not poetry but chess and calligraphy. Unfortunately, calligraphy was in the male group and she did not draw chess. But until the final result, no one would know who was the first in this category. At the end, it was Shen Miao's group's turn. Shen Yu glanced at Shen Miao. Most likely she bore a grudge against Shen Miao for making her look bad. Shen Miao did not maintain the appearance of a good older sister. She smiled and said to Shen Miao, "Later on the stage, 5th younger sister must give way to older sister. This kind of confident appearance, even I am somewhat afraid." These words were heard by Fan Luer, who was standing at the side and could not help but laugh. "Shen Yu, what are you talking about? What confident appearance? Could it be that Shen Miao has some tricks up her sleeves? Now that you mention it, I also have some expectations." Zhao Yan rejoiced in others' misfortune. Remember last year when Shen Miao drew the zither? She pulled out the strings of other people's bamboo fragrant zither. Most likely she inherited General Shen's bravery. This year when drawing, one must not break the brush. As she spoke, she touched Shen Miao's cheeks. Such a white and tender face. Would it be painted into a face by oneself later? Shen Miao did not move and looked at her indifferently. Under that extremely cold gaze, Zhao Yan's smile gradually froze. Fan Luer also felt that Shen Miao's expression was not good, and her heart suddenly felt an inexplicable lingering fear. Involuntarily, she pulled Zhao Yan's hand back. Qing seemed to be somewhat impatient and looked at Shan Miao. What are you quarreling about? If you want to quarrel, go quarrel on the stage and let everyone see your faces. When she said that, even though Zhao Yan and the rest were dissatisfied, they did not speak anymore. At the male side of the banquet, Kai Lin looked at Shan Yu's figure excitedly, but that glutinous rice dumpling pulled Su Mingfeng. That beautiful older sister is also there. Eldest brother, look. Su Mingfeng did not know whether to laugh or cry, as he did not know why his younger brother was so persistent with Shan Miao. He was already in the 3rd year of the country, and this time he lied that it was the first time he went out after he was seriously ill, and he appeared to be very weak, so he could not participate in the academy examinations. He also knew of Shen Miao's name, since the entire Ding capital knew that the formidable great general swept across the battlefield but gave birth to an idiot daughter. She will definitely win. Su Minglang clenched his fist and said. Su Mingfeng's heart was non-committal, as he knew that today it would be Shen Yu who would come out on top. Before going on stage, Shen Yu could not help but tease Shen Miao, 5th younger sister. Later, do not be lenient. Older sister will wait for you. Definitely. Shen Miao answered. She would definitely not be lenient. Chapter 40. The chief examiner was the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Zhong Ziqi. He was a little old man with a head full of gray hair, but was usually very serious and upright. He only opened the scroll in his hands and began to read out the examination questions. Regarding the painting side, it was actually different every year, but this year the academy examinations and the chrysanthemum banquet happened to be together, so the questions were much simpler. Just like book with chrysanthemum as the title, painting also with chrysanthemum as the title. There were 5 long tables on the stage, and there were brushes, ink, paper and inkstone on the table. One would walk to the table in order, and the drummers would beat the drums heavily, signaling the start of the academy examinations. Everyone stretched their necks to look up. These 5 people could be considered as the 5 people with unique characteristics. Shen Yu was a talented female that everyone knew. Qing was beautiful and arrogant. Fan Luer and Zhao Yan were a pair of sisters that had a good relationship, and Shen Miao was naturally that stupid and ignorant idiot. Most of the males were looking at Shen Yu and Qing, but most of the females were looking at Shan Miao. Bai Wei covered her mouth and said, Today Shen Miao seemed to be well behaved and did not have any strange actions. It looks like it is the case. Including this time, Shen Miao had passed through a total of 4 academy examinations. The first time she drew a chess piece, she randomly played a few pieces and was defeated like a landslide. The second time she drew a book, she overturned the ink plate and dirted her clothes. The third time she drew a zither, and the string of a good bamboo zither was broken by her. Rather than saying that everyone was here to watch Shen Miao go up the stage, it was better to say that she would make a fool of herself in front of everyone. But today it was somewhat different. The high stage was wide, and the young female was sitting in front of the table. Her actions of holding the brush were very proper, as if she had received rigorous training, as if there was not a single bit of mistake that could be picked out. In the golden autumn of the 10th month, the cold wind blew through the hall and lifted the stray hair on her forehead. She lowered her head slightly, and one could only see the oval-shaped little face and the eyelashes that hung down, drawing a beautiful arc. There was actually some beauty. That lotus-green cloak fluttered fiercely. She sat upright, but her brush was free and unrestrained, as if she didn't care. However, that kind of confident bearing was like the begonia in her black hair, blooming openly in a reserved way. Yi Foreign pursed her lips and said to Ran Wanyun with an unclear meaning, "Fifth mother has really grown up." Ren Wanyun forced a smile, but her hands quietly tightened. Behind him came the chatter of the girls. Up until now, Shen Miao has not made a fool of herself. Could it be that she has really changed? That's impossible. She's probably just putting on an act. Didn't you see that she didn't even think before writing? Shen Yu still needs to think for a few more moments, but for her to be like this, the biggest possibility is that she is just casually painting. Feng and Ning looked at Shan Miao on the stage, and that strange feeling came again. She suddenly had an intuition that today's chrysanthemum banquet might not be like the past. For example, would Shen Miao on the stage really make a fool of herself? Or was it to destroy all the misconceptions people had about her in an unstoppable manner? At the male side of the banquet, some people gradually discovered the difference. This group was probably the most pleasing to the eye out of all the women's groups. Shen Yu's pink dress was simple and elegant, gentle and beautiful. Qin Qingqing's green dress was wide-sleeved, arrogant and beautiful. Fan Luer was delicate and charming. Zhao Yan was weird, and if one were to say who had the least special characteristics, it would be that stupid, cowardly and tacky Shen Miao. But at a glance, among the 5 of them, Shen Miao was not only not inferior, but stood out. She just sat there quietly with her head lowered. But she gave off the feeling that she was looking down on all living things. It was as if that delicate figure was standing on a high and decisive position, causing people to involuntarily feel the urge to submit to her. Pei Lang frowned. How could a person's temperament undergo such an earth-shattering change? Was this person really Shen Miao? Fu Xiaoyi could not hide the surprise in his heart. It was not that he noticed the earth-shattering difference between Shen Miao in the past, but the way Shen Miao sat, the straight back and the way she raised her hands made him think of a person. The current mistress of the 6 palaces, the Empress. Fu Xiaoyi knew that his own thoughts were very ridiculous. The entire Ding capital knew that Shen Miao loved him, and he hated himself to be loved by such a female. But most of the time the news about Shen Miao was heard from rumors. It was rumored that Shen Miao was ignorant and incompetent, unbearably tacky, rough, stupid and cowardly. Now it seemed that there was only one feeling in his heart. One fear that those rumors were not all true. Really strange. The blue-clad youth who was previously reprimanded by Kai Lin said curiously, "Wasn't it said that the second-year student Shen Miao is an idiot? It does not look like it." Kai Lin was also stunned. His eyes kept following Shen Miao, but Shen Miao seemed to have a kind of magic that made one involuntarily notice her. It was as if she was born to stand in a position that others could see, and it was especially obvious today. He tried hard to suppress his own strange thoughts and snorted, "Just putting on an act. Eldest brother, she will win." Su Minglang tugged at the sleeves of the person beside him. Su Mingfeng's brows were smiling, but his expression was somewhat strange. "Shen Miao?" After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the drummer beat the drum again, indicating that the time was up. Shen Yu put down her brush. She was very confident in her painting today. Beside her left was Qin Qing. Qin Qing had also completed his painting and was washing the brush. Even if it was a simple action, when done by her, it was as moving as a painting. But no matter how moving it was in the academy examinations, one would not rely on one's beauty to speak. She then turned her head to look at Shen Miao and thought that Shen Miao had always achieved nothing, but there was no accident today. Most likely it was because there was someone beside her that she became smarter. One could pretend, but one could not pretend one's talent. At this moment she should be in a fluster and had not finished. However, in front of her, Shen Miao had already put down her brush and calmly looked at the people who came to collect the paintings. Shen Yu's smile stiffened. "All right, go down." After everyone's paintings were collected, it would be the academy examinations for the second-year female, and this would require time. "Fifth younger sister, what exactly did you draw?" After Shen Yu came down from the stage, she could not wait to ask Shen Miao. She did not know why, but Shen Miao made her very uneasy. "You will know in a while." Shen Miao gently smiled, and there seemed to be something more meaningful in her smile. She turned around and walked to a place where no one could see before speaking to Guyu beside her. "Think of a way to send this to the hands of second young master of the Annals residence." "Oh, it is the person dressed in green on the opposite seat from the left." Guyu hesitated for a moment and seemed to be somewhat confused before saying, "This servant will save it. Go." Shen Miao patted her shoulder and walked back to her original seat. From afar she looked at Pei Lang. When Pei Lang looked up, he met with a pair of eyes. Even from afar, one could see the scrutiny contained within. "Apologies, Pei Lang." Shen Miao thought in her heart, "I will borrow your hands to shake the unbreakable foundation of the imperial family of Mingqi. After all, you owe me." Chapter 41. The examiners on the stage were evaluating the results, and the students below the stage were also discussing. Today Shen Miao did not make a fool of herself, and it made the academy examinations somewhat boring, but it also made those who usually did not look at her to pay attention to her. Humans were all strange. Those who were bad usually only needed to perform a little better, and perhaps in the eyes of others, they would be able to turn over a new leaf. Feng and Ning was somewhat nervous and would look towards the examiners on the stage from time to time. One did not know what the reason was, but the few Darren on the stage seemed to be arguing. It seems that today is also very intense. Fu Xiaoan smiled, but females, there is no need to be so calculative as they will not enter officialdom. His character had always been somewhat conceited and was not afraid that the Darren beside him would be dissatisfied if they heard it. After all, some of their daughters were those students who were on the stage. The academy examinations opportunity is rare. Fu Xiaoyi said. Naturally, one must grasp it well. Ninth younger brother said correctly. Fu Xiaoxian picked up the teacup on the table and drank a mouthful before saying, if there is a particularly outstanding female, ninth younger brother can also pay attention. Even though he looked calm, he was not easy to deal with. Both openly and secretly, he was probing if Fu Xiaoyi would find a wife with a strong background for himself. Fifth older brother is joking. Fu Xiaoyi shook his head. My marriage, imperial father will make the decision and it is not up to me to comment. That was also true, as Fu Xiaoyi's daily matters were arranged by the emperor, and rarely would he take the initiative to have any ideas. In the eyes of outsiders, this kind of prince was simply too docile and did not have any ambitions, exactly the same as consort Dong Shu, but in the eyes of Prince Jing Fu Xiaoxian, there were some differences. In one's life, one would have to take a gamble. Isn't it the same for a wife? Prince Jing's words had a hidden meaning. Until the end. Who would know what the ending would be? Prince Zhou could also hear his younger brother's probing of Fu Xiaoyi, and his eyes turned but did not speak. Not long later, the examiner on the stage stood up to announce the results. In the zither category, it was no surprise that Feng and Ning took the lead. Originally, there was no one that was particularly powerful in this group, and Feng and Ning was considered to be very outstanding. Naturally, she was happy and went up to receive the invitation for the academy examinations, and happily went down the stage to show it to Feng Furen. Madame Feng was very happy to see this. To a lady, this kind of glory, although it was impossible for her to become an official, it was like the icing on the cake. The children of noble families naturally did not lack wealth and glory, but their own talent and beauty could clearly distinguish them from each other. Feng and Ning used today's academy examinations to raise her level by one level. In chess, Bai Wei came out on top. There were examiners who specialized in recording the chess games, and they showed the drawn chess paths to the people below to show it to ensure fairness. Xun Miao glanced at the chess game. Bai Wei's game was much more detailed, so he had made it to the end. It was a pity that he paid too much attention to the details and didn't look at the big picture. Instead, he slowed down the progress and was somewhat burdensome. In the book category, Shun Qing only got second place. The first was Yi Pei Lan. Her poem about chrysanthemum was elegant and lovely. Even though it was too much for an unmarried young lady to write such a poem, but Guang Wentang had the advantage of breaking through the shackles of etiquette, and the requirements for females were not too harsh. In addition, the little poem was indeed interesting and lovely. It was not purely about chrysanthemum, but it was using chrysanthemum to express one's yearning. Thus the level went up another level. Shun Qing's expression was not good, but she was naturally not good at composing poems. Thus she was very helpless. The last one was Shun Miao's group of paintings. The examiners on the stage had different expressions, and it seemed that the most intense dispute was this group. The womenfolk were guessing that Shin Yu and Qin Qing each had their own merits, and it was difficult to choose. After all, these two people were often compared in Guang Wentang. Qin Qing sat at the same spot with an arrogant expression, as if she did not care about the result at all, but the fingers that were holding the teacup were somewhat stiff. In comparison, it was Shun Yu who was much more calm. She sat beside Chun Roqiu and her gaze was somewhat coquettish and shy. Chun Roqiu looked at her gently. This daughter was intelligent and sensitive, and her talent was as outstanding as her. She was proficient in the 4 arts, and every year in the academy examinations, she would always be in the limelight. Seeing how happy she looked, today it should be in the bag. Shun Yu naturally had a well-thought-out card up her sleeve. She had the strength of her brushwork, the interest, and even the idea had been thought of. It was as if she had long found out the preferences of the examiners, and was always able to come up with the best works. So what if Qin Qing was beautiful? At the end, she was only good to look at but useless. Thinking that she was useless, her gaze turned towards Shan Miao, who was sitting at the other side. Today Shan Miao had caused her to suffer such a big loss, and she thought that Shen Miao would make a fool of herself on the academy examination stage, but who knew that Shen Miao had escaped safely. But now that the paintings were to be shown to everyone, Shen Miao would not be able to avoid ridicule. In any case, she was going to make a fool of herself, and a trace of happiness flashed in her heart. The examiner who was in charge of reading out the results sang loudly on the stage. Painting group's first rank, Shen Miao. Shen Miao? First rank. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, and everyone started to clamor. Even the voices of the examiner who was reading out the first few names were drowned out. Shen Yu's smile suddenly froze on her face. She looked incredulously at Chen Roqiu and her voice trembled. Mother, just now who was the first rank? I must have heard it wrongly. Chen Roqiu pinched Shen Yu's arm. Even though she was angry in her heart, she had eaten more meals than Shen Yu and knew that in this situation, there would definitely be a lot of people who wanted to see Shen Yu's reaction. It would be alright if Shen Yu was magnanimous, but for her to be in such a desperate situation, she had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. Even though Shan Qing and Ren Wanyun rejoiced in others' misfortune, this was the first time Shen Yu's face was swept away by others, but when they heard that it was Shen Miao, they were also surprised. They thought that the examiner had mistaken Shen Yu's and Shen Miao's names. There was a lot of discussion in the female side of the banquet, and naturally there was an uproar in the male side of the banquet. What is going on? Why is it not little Yu? Kailin suddenly stood up and looked at his classmate. Did I hear it wrongly? Is it that old man who read it wrongly? Naturally she was not the only one who had such thoughts, especially the youths who were in the same class as Shan Miao, as they were discussing with a look of extreme surprise. Look, older brother. I knew that she would win. Su Minglang pulled Su Mingfeng. In this group of people, he was probably the happiest as the white fat on his face shook. Su Mingfeng also had a headache. Who would have thought that it was Shen Miao? One had to know that every time before the academy examinations, there would be private casinos that would come and gamble. He had bet on Shen Yu, but he had bet 1,000 liang of silver. Well, 1,000 liang of silver had all gone down the drain. If Master Su knew about it, he would definitely tear him apart. Looking at Su Minglang who was jumping up and down in joy, Su Mingfeng wanted to cry but had no tears. Pei Lang frowned but did not look at the examiner on the stage, but looked at the purple-clad young female in the female side of the banquet. Her face was abnormally calm as she indifferently looked at everyone's surprise and doubt. She had long known that she would win. Chapter 42. The discussion continued and the examiner on stage had already shown the painting to everyone to show the fairness of the results. Fan Luer's and Zhao Yan's paintings were of the same path. Both were the scenery of a garden with chrysanthemum blooming. In all fairness, it was beautiful but the artistic conception was too mediocre so naturally it was ranked at the back. Qin Qing on the other hand had painted a red fairy with a big chrysanthemum. This was most likely a type of chrysanthemum that she was familiar with. The painting only depicted this chrysanthemum, and it was so vivid and lifelike. It could be considered that she had taken a different path and completely ran away from the artistic conception, and only casually displayed her own painting skills. A red fairy was vividly displayed on the paper, and it was really beautiful. But the academy examinations not only tested one's painting skills, but also the meaning of the painting so no matter how beautiful this chrysanthemum was, it was only ranked third. Very quickly it was Shen Yu's painting. Shen Yu bit her lips as she sat beside Chen Roqiu. She barely managed to maintain a smile on her face but her fists were tightly clenched. If it was in the past, she would be smiling lightly and accept everyone's sincere praise and envy. But now this second was like a deep irony that made her feel that everyone was looking at her with ridicule and ridicule. Shen Yu's painting was a remnant chrysanthemum. The wind and rain rustled and a lot of the chrysanthemum petals in the courtyard had fallen but the scattered petals were still firmly attached to the branches and stood straight, as if it was an important person with integrity. And at the side, there were 2 sentences from a poem, rather die holding the fragrance on the branches than to be blown away by the north wind. This painting was considered to have a lofty intention. Generally speaking, from the painting to the person, the remnant chrysanthemum in the painting was of high quality, and the person who painted would be able to see that it was of high moral character. The examiner in charge loved such a talented and moral person the most. If Shen Yu's painting was not able to get first rank, it was really unimaginable what Shen Miao had painted. Painted so well? How could it be second? Bai Wei exclaimed, I really do not understand. Chen Roqiu also could not understand. Initially she thought that Shen Yu was slightly nervous today, and had taken a wrong path. Who knew that when this painting was taken out, she knew that her daughter did not do anything wrong, and it was the same as the previous academy examinations. It was indeed a well-deserved first rank. But why was the result different? Ren Wanyun was somewhat rejoicing in Shan Yu's misfortune. Shen Yu was outstanding and had always suppressed Shen Qing in the academy examinations. Seeing that Shen Yu suffered a loss this time, even though Shen Miao winning first place made her unhappy, but since it had nothing to do with her, she was always happy to watch the show. The examiner on the stage ordered the two children to unroll the scroll, and the noise stopped abruptly. The drawing paper was very big and Shen Miao's painting had too much white space. Her painting skills were not outstanding. Therefore, he only drew a rough view of the distant scenery, but unexpectedly, there was a kind of magnificent atmosphere. On the scroll, yellow sand was endless, and a setting sun was gushing blood red. A broken sword stood in the yellow soil, and a white chrysanthemum was below the sword. Here, the chrysanthemum seemed to be just an ornament. It was so small that even the meridians of the petals could not be seen. But in this painting it was like a finishing touch. A bleak and desolate feeling gushed out. Everyone present was silent for a moment. Even through the pen and paper, one could feel the desolation and misery in it, as well as the helpless struggle. That was war. Chen Roqiu and Shen Yu trembled at the same time. After seeing clearly what was painted on the scroll, they knew that there was absolutely no possibility of a comeback in this match. Yes, Shen Yu was indeed elegant and her character was not gaudy, and was able to take care of her character and nobility. But Shen Miao's painting had completely jumped out of the person. If one said that Shen Yu was using the chrysanthemum to praise people, then Shen Miao was using the flower to express her will. How could the feelings of a lone person be compared to the cruelty of war? Chapter 43. No wonder those examiners were arguing endlessly just now and were slow to come to a conclusion. One feared that they did not think that such a majestic painting was actually drawn by the idiot Shen Miao's hands. The chief examiner, the grand secretary of the cabinet Zhong Ziqi said, Student Shen Miao, come up and talk about why this painting was made. Every student who obtained first rank would have to talk about their understanding of getting the first rank. However, today Shen Miao was asked to talk about the reason for the painting. Naturally, it was because everyone did not believe that she was able to make this painting and feared that it was an idea that she heard from somewhere else. Shen Qing smiled and whispered to Yi Peilan at the side, This time the cat is out of the bag. But this was really not drawn by her? Yi Peilan was somewhat puzzled. Just now we all saw it. She personally drew it stroke by stroke. That painting skill is not outstanding. As for the painting intent, who knows if there was someone guiding it? Shan Qing looked disdainfully at Shen Miao, who was walking up the stage. After living with her for so many years, I still do not know what she knows. Now that Grand Secretary Zhong wants her to talk about the reason for the painting, one think that she would not be able to say it. One fear that she would lose all her face again. Yi Peilan also smiled when she heard it. Like I said, how could there be such a saying of becoming a talented female so quickly? One fear that it was to attract that person. Her eyes ambiguously swept over to Prince Ding's side of the male side of the banquet, to invite an expert to guide. Shen Miao could be considered to have racked her brains for him. Shen Qing's face stiffened and suppressed the unhappiness in her heart. Let's take a look. On the stage, Shen Miao quietly looked at the unfolded scroll. She slowly stretched out her hand and under everyone's astonished gaze, she caressed the painting. The reason why this painting was made was because I heard from my father that every year on the battlefield, there were many heroes who died on the battlefield, dying in the yellow sands. But the journey was long and they could only be buried on the battlefield. At that time, there were no chrysanthemums in the northwest deserts or the northern grasslands. Chrysanthemums bloomed in the warm south and in the bustling Ding capital. There were songs and dances to celebrate peace, and there was no need to worry about food and clothing, but it was at the cost of the lives of the soldiers at the border. The discussion gradually stopped, and everyone's eyes gathered on the purple-clothed girl. Her gaze was calm, and she spoke as if she was narrating a story. My father once said that the soldiers who died in the war couldn't even have a bunch of chrysanthemums after their sacrifice. There would be no flowers blooming on the battlefield, and the generals and soldiers would not even be able to experience a complete mourning. Their wives and children can only stay far away, wearing white chrysanthemums on their heads and offering them white chrysanthemums. I believe that the reason everyone is able to calmly admire chrysanthemums here is all because there are brave men guarding the border. It's a pity that I can't do anything for them. I can only paint a bunch of white chrysanthemums in front of a pile of yellow soil to comfort their souls. The young girl stood in the wind. Her eyes were clear, but her words were powerful and resonant. It was as if her words were the only thing in the world that was clear and sweet. However, they were like morning bells and evening drums, beating on everyone's hearts. Shen Miao lowered her eyes slightly. Did the Tian family of Mingqi not want to deal with the aristocratic families and the Shen family? But the world was so big that everyone's eyes would see and everyone's ears would listen. Preventing the people's mouths was more important than preventing a river. Since the Tian family wanted to attack the general residence, she would let everyone in the world take a look. Look, the Shen family used their lives to fight for meritorious deeds. The Shen family used their lives to guard the city walls of Mingqi. Now all of you nobles were singing and dancing in the capital, and it was all because of the blood and flesh on the battlefield. Stepping on the blood of the soldiers, would the imperial family of Mingqi still dare to suppress them with great fanfare? If you dare, then do not be afraid of the eyes of everyone in the world. Chapter 44. The most supreme thing was the imperial power. What was more powerful than the imperial power was the common people's mouths. Of course one could use an iron fist to suppress it, but when that day comes, the common people would not dare to speak nonsense and the joke would spread out. Wouldn't it be the biggest joke in the world? The imperial family of Mingqi was probably like this. It was obvious that they were corrupt internally and had done many dirty things, but on the surface they still had to put on a face that they cared about the country. They enjoyed the protection and offerings of the aristocratic families with a clear conscience, but at the end they had to make a false accusation. Shen Miao's words made everyone present gradually quiet down. The daughters thought of the glory of their ancestors, and if the residence was a military general, they would be even more moved. The male students were at the age where they were full of vigor, and the soldiers on the battlefield were admired everywhere, so naturally they would worship heroes. But there were some who were not so happy. The three princes of Mingqi who were present all frowned at the same time. Others did not know, but they knew what the imperial family's intention was: to treat the aristocratic families. The Shen family was a tall tree that attracted the wind, and sooner or later, the emperor would use other excuses to eradicate them. However, the Shen family had a good reputation among the common people for so many years, and to topple them was not something that could be done overnight. Now Shen Miao's words seemed to be mourning the soldiers, but in fact it was praising the meritorious deeds, and also put the soldiers in a position of being in the spotlight. If the imperial family had a trace of inappropriateness, they would be in the wrong in terms of morality and conduct. Was she doing it intentionally? Everyone looked up, and after the young female finished speaking, she became silent. Her robe was a little loose, and it fluttered in the cold wind, making her figure seem even more delicate. Most likely she was thinking wrongly, as she was just a daughter in the boudoir. This time she was able to uncharacteristically take the lead was because she was Shen Xian's daughter, and Shen Xian had really told her about the matters on the battlefield. Thus she was lucky. Prince Yu's gaze followed the purple-clad young female, and in a flash, he suddenly smiled meaningfully. This young lady of the Shen family is indeed very interesting. One did not know why, but when Prince Yu's words came out, Pei Lang and Fu Xiuyi frowned at the same time, and there was a trace of a bad premonition in their hearts. When Prince Zhou heard it, he asked meaningfully, "Does Royal Shu fancy that young lady of the Shen family?" One heard that the young lady of the Shen family is ignorant and idiotic, but now it seems that it is not so. She has a sharp tongue and looks are not bad. If there is an additional royal saw. He laughed very obscene. It should be very interesting. Prince Yu of the first rank was now over 40 years old, and in addition to his brutality and viciousness, the number of females that were played to death by him was uncountable. If Shen Miao were to fall into his hands, one feared that in a short period of time she would perish. Zhou's words were already out, but he had such arrogant temperament so others would not find it strange when he said it. However, it was really too immoral to put a budding girl into such a tiger's mouth without rhyme or reason. Prince Jing, however, thought further than his own twin brother. Even though the imperial family had the intention to suppress the Shen family, but the Shen family had military power in their hands like a common man with a treasure. If any prince were to obtain the Shen family's help in private, it would be a huge bargaining chip in the road to the throne. But if Shen Miao were to marry to Prince Yu, then Prince Yu would no longer be able to fight for power. Perhaps the best way would be to place the military power in the imperial family, and not be coveted by any prince. Thinking of this, Prince Jing, Fu Xiuyi nodded his head. The young lady of the Shen family is quick-witted. If Royal Shu feels that it is not bad, there is nothing wrong. Fu Xiuyi's brows wrinkled even tighter. He naturally considered the things that Prince Jing could think of. He knew that Shen Miao marrying to Prince Yu residence would have 100 benefits and no harm to him. Firstly, he could get rid of Shen Miao's entanglement and there would be one less peach blossom joke. Secondly, the Shen family's military power was too hot, and even if he had the intention to use it, he was afraid that it would cause the emperor to suspect that the gains would not make up for the losses. It would be better to leave it in Prince Yu residence and wait for an opportunity to make a move. But he did not know why he felt that there was an unpleasant thought in his heart, as if it was not right to do so. Pei Lang looked worriedly at Shen Miao, who was walking down the stage. Her steps were unhurried and her expression was calm. Most likely she did not know that her fate was already in the hands of this group of imperial children. He sighed in his heart. After all, they were teacher and student, but he was just a little teacher and could not change anything. He could only feel pity for Shen Miao's fate in his heart. Prince Yu of the first rank waved his hands impatiently, and did not seem to be very happy. The smile on his lips was indeed somewhat sinister. Imperial nephew, it is not that this prince does not know what you all are planning. The residents of Prince Yu of the first rank would not be able to eat up this big Buddha of the Shen family. His eyes landed on his stump leg. But the young lady of the Shen family is interesting. It would not be bad to bring her over to play. Su Mingfeng took a look at this side. He was close to Fu Xiuyi and the rest and only seriously watched the situation on the stage, but his heart was somewhat indignant. No matter how stupid that Shen Miao was, to be targeted by Prince Yu of the first rank, one feared that it would bode ill rather than well. It would be alright if Shen Xian was in the Ding capital, but unfortunately Shen Xian would only return at the end of the year. Without father and older brothers to protect, how would a young lady contend with these vicious wolves? As if he had expected the tragic ending, Su Mingfeng sighed and brought Su Minglang to Master Su before quietly leaving the banquet. Shen Miao did not know about the changes at the male side of the banquet. Jingzhe was very happy for Shen Miao, but it was Shen Yu who finally could not maintain the good expression on her face and left the banquet somewhat stiffly. After the female group's examinations, it was the male group's turn. On the side of the female side, the young ladies who had passed the examinations all left the banquet to rest. Feng and Ning followed beside Shen Miao. And this previously arrogant young lady finally revealed a look of heartfelt admiration towards Shen Miao. She said, "Just now you did really well. It was really great." Shen Miao lightly replied, "You are also not bad." Most likely it was because she thought that she got first place in the Qin category. Feng and Ning smiled. "Hard work does not fail those who are willing. I will go to the horse carriage to get something. Wait for me here." After Feng and Ning left, Shen Miao walked to the plum blossom forest in Bei Yintang to wait for her. The plum blossoms had not bloomed in this season, but the trees were verdant and very lush. Guyu walked out from it and looked around before whispering, "Young lady, it has already been sent to Gentleman Librarian Jing's hands. It was changed by bribing the servant outside to ensure safety." "Very good," Shen Miao said. Guyu was still somewhat puzzled as she did not understand why her young lady would do this. One had to know that it was impossible for her young lady to be acquainted with the gentleman of Librarian Jing's family. Just at this moment one heard a chuckle from the top of the head. The three of them looked up and saw that on the branches of the nearby trees, there was a touch of purple that floated down and landed in front of the three of them in a blink of an eye. That purple-clad youth's appearance was so charming that it did not look like a mortal. His hands were folded across his chest as he lazily leaned against the tree trunk. There was a smile, but not a smile on his lips, but his eyes were as deep as the Ding capital's winter night, with a chilly coldness. It was Xie Jingxing. Chapter 45. Young lady. Guyu and Jingzhe were somewhat vigilant as they stood in front of Shen Miao to protect her. Shouting loudly would be too much of a loss of composure. Moreover, this youth was dressed in brocade clothes and was born with a noble and beautiful appearance, making one unable to help but suspect his identity. But after all, he was a stranger. Guyu and Jingzhe were afraid that there would be an accident. Guyu, Jingzhe. Both of you guard at the entrance of the forest, Shen Miao said. But young lady. Both of them were somewhat hesitant. Go. Shen Miao slightly frowned. One did not know why, but she was very good at giving orders. Every time she ordered the maids to do something, there would be an inexplicable majesty that no one dared to refute. Jingzhe and Guyu could only retreat to the entrance of the forest. You are indeed interesting. Xie Jingxing leaned against the tree trunk and looked at her playfully. He was obviously a noble young master, but his eyes were as sharp as a bloody blade on the battlefield, and his plain tone was able to bring out a biting cold intent. He was after all a person who had seen blood on the battlefield. What does Marquis Xie want to say? Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing suddenly appeared, and naturally it was not for idle chatter. Even though this person was young, the way he did things was very insightful. Since the old Marquis could not control him, he would be even more unbridled in the way he did things, making others unable to grasp the path. Prince Yu residence is currently lacking a Wangfei. That cripple seemed to have taken a fancy to you and wanted to congratulate you. His tone was unclear. However, to call Prince Yu a cripple was considered to be very daring, but when Xie Jingxing said it, there was a trace of contempt and ridicule, as if Prince Yu was just an unbearably dirty plaything. This person's ambition was very high. Shen Miao was thinking in her heart but did not show it on her face. She had actually forgotten what this calm look represented in the other person's eyes. Xie Jingxing suddenly took a step forward. He was extremely tall, and Shen Miao's entire person was under his shadow. The purple-clad youth leaned over slightly and whispered in her ear. You indeed already knew. There was a nice cold bamboo scent coming from the youth's body, and his voice was deliberately lowered to have an ambiguous magnetism. This action was also ambiguous. Shen Miao looked up, and that handsome face was right in front of her, and the corners of his lips were slightly hooked up, adding a bit of evil air to his smile. But after all, she was not a real budding girl. She only slightly lowered her eyes and said, So what if I know? So what if I don't know? Xie Jingxing saw that she was indifferent and was too lazy to act like a playboy, so he pushed her away without any tenderness towards the fairer sex. He waved a letter in his hand and smiled frivolously. You know, but you are not anxious about your own matters and instead worry about second young master librarian Jing? Shen Miao's eyes suddenly moved and stared at him tightly. Her tone involuntarily became somewhat ruthless. Isn't Marquis Xie meddling in other people's business? It's just a piece of paper. Why are you so nervous? Xie Jingxing regained his frivolous look. What kind of relationship do you have with second librarian Jing to help him like this? Or, Shen family's girl, what are you planning? Shen Miao's face was as heavy as water as she quietly stared at the paper in Xie Jingxing's hands. The paper was thin, but it was a heavy stone in her heart. It was the circulation of law that she had memorized for a long time. In the past lifetime, Pei Lang relied on this piece of paper and was discovered by Fu Xiuyi. From then on, Fu Xiuyi took him in as an aide and gave advice to Fu Xiuyi's empire. Now he had yet to show his talent, but Shen Miao wanted to cut off all possibilities. Not only that, it was best for Pei Lang to never work for the imperial family. This was the safest approach. And the second young master of librarian Jing's family, Gao Yan, was a newly emerging aristocratic family in the Ding capital. The imperial family of Mingqi wanted to suppress the old aristocratic families, so naturally, they had to support the new aristocratic families. The librarian Jing's family was the most prominent branch that was newly supported. The eldest young master of librarian Jing's family, Gao Jing, was truly talented, and after Fu Xiuyi ascended to the throne, he greatly supported him. The librarian Jing's family thus received grace and became more tyrannical. And this Gao Yan, He even coveted her Wan Yu. If she was not the mistress of the 6 palaces at that time and Fu Xiaoyi had not started to deal with the Shen family, one feared that Wan Yu would have been killed. This Gao Yan's talent was not as good as his older brother, and he was extremely vain and always liked to take his older brother's achievements as his own. He was a person who would seek revenge for the slightest flaw and was narrow-minded. In the past lifetime, Gao Yan did not enter the official career, and in this lifetime, the librarian Jing's family had not reached its peak yet. Gao Jing had just entered the official career not long ago, so she might as well put in more effort to send Gao Yan into this broad official career. She took Pei Lang's circulation of law to Gao Yan because she knew that every year during the academy examinations, Gao Yan would let the servants spend money to buy a copy of the examination paper. Today she let Gu Yu and the others replace this copy of the examination paper. With Fu Xiaoyi's character of cherishing talent, he would definitely win Gao Yan over at all costs. And Gao Yan had a vain personality and would definitely not admit that this was not his doing. For such a person to enter the Mingqi's official circles, she wanted to see how these two people would fight against Fu Xiaoyi. Cutting off Fu Xiaoyi's powerful arm and replacing it with an empty head that stirred shit. Shen Miao had such a good idea, but who knew that halfway through, Xie Jingxing would appear and make her plan fall through for no reason. Her eyes were bright and it was as if thousands of words were gathered in the clear eyes of a cub. Xie Jingxing finally raised his lips and lazily said, "You do not need to show such a hateful expression. This letter was copied by my people, and the original copy is still in the hands of the Gao family's brat." Shen Miao was slightly surprised as she had never thought that it would be such a result. She looked at Xie Jingxing and was silent for a moment before asking, "Little Marquis is broad-minded?" "It is not that broad-minded, it is just that this Marquis has a point of praise." Xie Jingxing's eyes were slightly cold. One do not like to meddle in other people's business. Just as Shen Miao was about to speak, she heard Xie Jingxing's voice again. "Now can you tell this Marquis why you wrote a letter to the librarian Jing?" Shen Miao sighed in her heart. Even though she had the intention to tie the Shen and Xie family on the same boat, now was not the time. The discord between the Shen and Xie families had been going on for a long time, and was not something that could be resolved in a day and night. It was a slow plan, but who knew that out of nowhere Xie Jingxing was involved and the good plans were all messed up. She did not trust anyone and had her own path to walk. Be it Xie Jingxing or the Xie family, they were all chess pieces in the great scheme of the world. No chess player would explain the reason to the chess pieces. This Marquis thought that for you to help him like this, unless you have a personal affair with him and help your lover to fight for the limelight. Xie Jingxing's smile was mischievous as he sized Shen Miao up, afterwards thinking that even though the second son of the Gao family is not a good person, his eyesight in picking females is not bad. He looked at Shen Miao. It was clearly an extremely beautiful eyebrow, but it was as piercing as the northwest desert. Also, if you want to help Gao Yan, it means that you want to help Warden Jing's reputation. But you don't help Gao Yan. That's the trash Gao Yan. It looks like you have bad intentions. He smiled maliciously, but his words hit the nail on the head. Shen family's girl, do you have enmity with librarian Jing? Chapter 46. Shen family's girl, do you have enmity with librarian Jing? Shen Miao quietly looked at the youth in front of her. His eyebrows were beautiful, but his heroic spirit was pressing. Even though he had a cynical expression, there was a steadiness that transcended his age. It was not what was shown on the outside, but when following him, there was a sense of security that even if the heavens were to collapse, the other party would be there to support it. Even in the previous lifetime when she was in the Qin country or in the inner palace, she had never seen such a clear person. With just one sentence he was able to see through the heart of everything. Such an amazing and brilliant person had to die young. It was really the heavens being jealous of heroic talents. A flash of regret flashed in her eyes, but when she opened her mouth again, it was in a flat tone. Yes, this game of chess is laid out in a roundabout way. Xie Jingxing's eyes were scrutinizing. To go around in such a big circle just to send Gao Yan into official career. Could it be that you want to mess up Mingqi's officialdom? Even though Shen Miao had lived for 2 lifetimes, her heart could not help but be slightly shocked. If Xie Jingxing's performance previously was that he was excessively smart and understood with a single point, then now this person seemed somewhat scary. Ordinary people would take one step and look at one step, and a smart person would take one step and look at 10 steps. Xie Jingxing's seemingly ordinary question was like taking one step and looking 1,000 miles away. Such a straightforward and undisguised knife made her somewhat not know how to answer. After a moment, she then answered, "What does this have to do with little Marquis? This Marquis does not care about Mingqi's officialdom, but the Marquis of Lineage cannot be touched." There was a warning in his tone. If you have any ideas on the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, then do not blame this Marquis for being impolite. Xun Miao glanced at him. Xie Jingxing seemed to be extremely disgusted with the residence of the Marquis of Lineage and in love to go against his father, but now it seemed that it was not a complete disgust and one fear that he still placed the residence of the Marquis of Lineage in his heart. Otherwise, in the last lifetime, he would not have ended up with thousands of arrows piercing his heart to protect the reputation of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage. And it was understandable for Xie Jingxing to suspect that she would take action on the Xie family. The Xun family and the Xie family had always been at loggerheads with one another. Moreover, the things that she was doing now were incomprehensible to others. In the eyes of others, it was indeed possible that the Xun family was setting a trap for the Xie family. "Marquis Xie, rest assured." She spoke faintly. Her tone was as if she was talking about how normal the weather was today. The Xun and Xie families mind their own business. Naturally, there will not be any incidents. What Marquis Xie was worried about would not happen. A person's life is only for a few decades and the wheel of fortune changes. Now the Xie family sees the Xun family as their enemy, but they do not know that there will be a day in the future when we will be in the same boat through thick and thin, sharing a common enemy. "Are you expressing goodwill to me?" Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "Yes," Xun Miao said calmly. Xie Jingxing sized up the girl in front of him. He had seen countless women since he was born. When he was young, those women wanted to get close to his father. Later on, those women started to get close to him. Among these women, there were those who were as beautiful as flowers, those who were devastatingly beautiful, those who were good at wielding swords and sabers, and those who were good at strategizing. Xie Jingxing had seen tens of thousands of intelligent people, but there was no one that surprised him like the person in front of him. Perhaps it was the intuition of someone who had experienced the battlefield, but Xie Jingxing could smell the scent of blood from this young girl. It was like a pool of stagnant water, but there was a huge ferocious beast lurking at the bottom. Now on the surface it was calm, but it was just waiting for an opportunity to move. When the day comes that it would break through, it would be a reign of terror. Even though this looks somewhat ridiculous, an unmarried female, how big of a storm could she stir up? But Xie Jingxing would never underestimate his intuition. The young female was covered in a lotus green silk cloak, and her pretty face was covered in frost. In this lush and verdant plum forest, there was a feeling of a 9-foot palace when she stood there. Noble, lonely, decisive, and bottomless abyss. Chapter 47. There is actually an intelligent person in the Xun family. His words were rather sarcastic, but he still said seriously, "Since that is the case, then go ahead and do it. Take it as watching a good show today. Do not disappoint this Marquis." He stood up and was about to turn and leave. "Marquis Xie," Xun Miao called out to him. "What else is there?" He stood still and asked without turning his head back. "The 2 Shu younger brothers of the Xie family will also go up to the academy examinations today," Xun Miao said lightly. "Marquis Xie, just let it go like this?" The 2 Shu sons of the Xie family, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao from Yinyang Madame Fang, were currently in 2nd grade. In fact, Xie Jingxing was also a 3rd grade student in Guangwentang, but he naturally did things freely and Guangwentang could not restrain him, so he was left to his own devices. Otherwise, Xie Jingxing would be taking the academy examinations with his 2 Shu younger brothers. In the past lifetime, Xie Jingxing did not participate in the academy examinations, but his 2 Shu younger brothers snatched the limelight. In all fairness, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao were considered to be very capable, and were among the best in the martial arts category. Because of this, they gained the emperor's eyes and were later promoted by Fu Xiuyi to work beside Fu Xiuyi. Xun Miao had always felt that the Marquis of Lin and father and son were intelligent people, so how would they end up in that kind of ending in the past lifetime? Even though the imperial family gave a pension at the end, the ones who were sheltered were Madame Fong and her 3 sons. In fact, there was no lack of doubts when one thought about it carefully. For example, the toppling of the Shin family in the past lifetime, the second and third household played a part in it. Looking at it this way, could there be an internal problem in the Xie family? You do not wish for this marquis to go up and compete with them? Xie Jingxing turned his head back and said with some surprise, just like how you compete with your older sister? Is Marquis Xie's situation not the same as mine? Shen Miao did not care about the ridicule in his words and said, the ones who stab the deepest are the people closest to them. I naturally understand that a noble person like Marquis Xie would disdain to be calculative with a Shu son, but the collapse of 1,000 li embankment would be caused by an ant's hole. This seemingly unremarkable thing is like a venomous snake lurking in the dark. Her tone was very clear and it was obviously a warning tone, but her eyes were as clear as a child. Cut them in the bud. I want them to never sprout. Compared to letting them enjoy the limitless glory and receive the support of nobles, pretending to be brothers and sisters forever, isn't it better to challenge them one by one and make a fool of themselves in front of others, so that they don't have to pretend in the mansion? Xie Jingxing's heart moved. His mother was the Golden Branch Jade Leaves Princess Yu Qing, so he did not want to be calculative with the son of a concubine. If he did that, not only would people say that he was not magnanimous enough, they would also mention that his birth mother had been angered to death by jealousy. He could ignore his own reputation, but he would always care about Princess Yu Qing's reputation. In the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, even though the Marquis of Lineage was biased towards him, it was inevitable that outsiders would gossip. Yet, the 3 of them still had to pretend to be obedient and loving, which made him feel nauseous. He only wanted to be an outsider and watch these 3 people put on a show, but now Shen Miao's words made his heart moved. Wouldn't it be better to extinguish their hopes? Shedding all pretense of cordiality in front of them, so that they would no longer have the face to respect each other and annoy each other? Shen Miao's voice seemed to be bewitching as she said, "It has been too long. Do not endure it. Do not endure it." He lowered his head and looked at the person who was close at hand. There was a faint fragrance coming from the young female's body. Like her, she looked pure but was actually cold and heartless. He clearly knew that she had a purpose in her suggestion, but it was impossible to refuse. His lips hooked up into a smile, and with a sweep of his sleeves, the begonia flower on his black hair fell into his palm. In the next second, the place where the begonia flower was at had turned into a small jade begonia. He picked up the flower and said in an ambiguous tone, "You are interesting. This flower is for you. The suggestion is not bad. Many thanks." Chapter 48. After Shen Miao exited the plum forest, Guyu and Jingzhe, who were guarding, let out a sigh of relief. Jingzhe looked up and did not see anyone and was somewhat puzzled. Why is there no one? Shen Miao also turned back to take a look. The plum forest was lush and swayed gently with the wind, but there was no one there. Xie Jingxing was someone who knew martial arts, and most likely, he had disappeared by leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls. She said, "Let's go." When they returned to the banquet, Feng and Ning hurriedly ran over and complained, "Did not I say to wait for me? One could not see anyone after turning one's head. When one returned, one did not see you here. Where did you go?" Looking at the chrysanthemum blooming well, and casually walking around, Shen Miao looked up at the stage. "Has it already started? You have been gone for a long time and the male group had already drawn lots." Feng and Ning curled her lips. Now it is the male group selection. The youths on the stage were competing and the first round of drawing lots had already passed, so Shen Miao did not care about the results of the competition. The second round was selection, where one had to choose the subject that one was good at. Shen Miao's gaze landed on the leftmost side of the opposite banquet, on the youth wearing lake green clothes. This youth was dark and strong and his facial features were not bad, but because of his overly strong body, he looked somewhat solid. Moreover, he still had to wear green clothes, which made his skin look even darker than before. Not only that, his hair was combed into a high bun with a bamboo hairpin inlaid with jade. Most likely he wanted to imitate the style of an ancient gentleman, but because he could not bear to dress up in a rich and noble manner, it looked somewhat nondescript. In a word, even though he wanted to be aloof and free from the mundane world, he was unable to hide the vulgarity of his entire body. This was Gao Yin of the historian of the capital. Gao Yin was still young as he was only 16 and his wings had yet to fully develop. It was until after Fu Xiuyi ascended the throne that Gao Yin rode on Gao Jin's wind to rise in status and bullied men and women in the Ding capital. He even dared to covet Wan Yu, which was extremely daring. Once she thought that Wan Yu was once teased by Gao Yan's words in the palace, Shen Miao was unable to restrain her anger. She stared at Gao Yan from afar, as if she was looking at her prey jumping into a trap. Gao Yan seemed to be thinking of something. His face was full of joy as he said something to Gao Jin. Of course he was happy to receive such a unique essay. He had just drawn Jingyi in the lottery, and his performance was mediocre. As long as he brought out this policy paper for the selection, he would be able to shock everyone. Shen Miao laughed coldly in her heart. Go take this policy paper and go to Fu Xiuyi's side. If he entered the official career before Gao Jin was promoted, he believed that with Gao Yan's methods, he would definitely be able to personally destroy the entire capital's warden. This was her gift to Warden Jing. As for Pei Lang, she turned to look at the green-robed man sitting not far from Fu Xiuyi. From now on in this life, you will slowly repay the debt you owe in the past. Shen Miao, after the men's group, it's the women's group's turn to choose. Will you choose? Will not. Shen Miao answered. During the academy examination, every student had to draw. Choose was based on one's own will. If one didn't want to choose, one could choose not to. So rather than saying that choose was a part of the academy examinations, it was better to say that it was a part where one's strong points could be displayed. If there was something that one was good at, naturally it could be displayed in the choose segment. So compared to draw, everyone was more enthusiastic about the choose segment. This was because the choose segment would display something that one was extremely confident in. But if one was like Shen Miao who did not have any strong points, then one might as well not participate in the choose segment as one would only make a fool out of oneself. Why? Feng Aning was somewhat disappointed as she said, "Aren't you good at drawing now? There should be some strong points in the other categories. Why not simply display it?" There is no need. Shen Miao started to fiddle with the chess game on the table, and replied to Feng Aning without even lifting her head. So what if I am in the limelight or not? There is no difference between the two. Moreover, I am not proficient in the four arts and it was just luck just now. You. Feng Aning was flustered. Who would say that about themselves? Fifth younger sister. A voice interrupted their conversation, and one did not know when Shen Yu stood in front of them. She said with a worried face, "Fifth younger sister, are you really not going to participate in the next choose segment? Could it be that second older sister wishes for me to participate?" Shen Miao retorted with a question. Shen Yu was choked by her words. She did not know why, but Shen Miao seemed to have steeled her heart to shed all pretense of cordiality with her. Shen Yu was also puzzled after much thought. Could it be that the matter of falling into the water was directed at the second and third household? Even though she was puzzled, she had accumulated anger in her heart towards Shen Miao who did not know what was good for her. Shen Yu bit her lips and seemed to be a little wronged as she softly said, "Naturally I hope that fifth younger sister will participate. Just now the drawing was extremely good and since fifth younger sister has such talent, why not continue to choose the drawing category so that everyone would not talk behind your back? If the drawing is done well again, then the rumors would be destroyed." Shen Yu's voice was not low and the surrounding were all young ladies in Furin so naturally they could hear every word clearly. These words did not seem to be anything but it spoke out the suspicions in everyone's heart. Even though Shen Miao's white chrysanthemum painting was ranked first, but she had been an idiot for so many years and the impression in people's hearts would not change so easily. Of course they would not believe that this painting was drawn by her. Thinking that perhaps there was someone guiding her from the side. Shen Yu also thought so in her heart, so she thought that as long as Shen Miao drew another painting in the second round, without the guidance of others, how would she be able to draw anything good and would definitely make a fool of herself? Feng Aning heard the meaning behind it and immediately sneered back. Second Shen young lady said it so easily. One must also pay attention to the composition of a painting. Even if second young lady were to draw by herself, it would not be possible to consecutively draw two paintings. Shun Miao was only a student and not a master of calligraphy and painting. Did I not see that fifth younger sister has made great progress? That's why I asked. Shen Yu smiled gently. Just now such a good painting could be drawn out, so what is not possible to draw another one? Shun Miao did not raise her head from the beginning to the end and only placed a chess piece on the chessboard loyally. Not interested. Thank you for the trouble. Shen Yu did not expect that in front of so many people, Shun Miao would dare to answer in such a lukewarm manner, and for a moment her face was somewhat embarrassed. The most infuriating thing in this world was to lay a trap, but the other party refused to take the move. Even when Shun Miao was facing everyone's suspicions, she still refused to accept her provocation. This made Shen Yu even more certain that the meaning of the painting was not what Shun Miao thought. The thought of making Shun Miao make a fool of herself was even more deeply rooted in her heart. She paused and suddenly continued to smile. Since fifth younger sister insists, then I will not say anything more. She turned around and returned to her seat. At the male side of the banquet, Kai Lin had been secretly looking at Shen Yu, but saw Shen Yu suddenly looking over from afar, and seemed to smile gently at him. Kai Lin was startled and was somewhat excited. However, he saw Shen Yu lowering her head and seemed to be somewhat sad. He suddenly became nervous. Chapter 49. On the stage, the male group selection was still ongoing. Classics and poems were all conforming to the rules and regulations, so there were naturally many people who chose. As long as one had an outstanding memory or studied thoroughly, generally speaking, it was easy to stand out. In contrast, there were only a few people who chose the field of policy theory. Policy theory was based on the current state of affairs and was very practical. This topic was also the one that was closest to the affairs of the imperial court. Everyone present was a young student. Other than a few disciples who had already begun to accept the teaching of the manor, the majority of them were still ignorant of the affairs of the imperial court, let alone give any good suggestions. Thus, policy theory was the most difficult, but if one really stood out, one would have half a foot in the official career. Shun Miao looked at the chessboard in front of her. At that time, Pei Lang's circulation of law was done in the third round of selection. In the selection field, the male could choose the female could choose the male, and the students could naturally choose the teacher. And one of the male students picked Mr. Pei Lang. Pei Lang was also brimming with talent. Just a few steps on the stage and in a blink of an eye, a policy theory was done. It was voluminous, quoting from classics but not exaggerating and always hitting the key points. It was really amazing. At that time it made the princes pay attention to it. But Pei Lang was also a clever person. He only wanted to be a teacher in Guangwentang, and did not think much about other things. His attitude was firm. If not for Fu Xiuyi's courtesy and Shun Miao's advice, this Pei Lang might not have entered the official career. The chessboard crisscrossed just like the life of the previous life. She lightly flicked her sleeves and the entire game was disrupted. Shun Miao put down a piece. How about starting a new game with her as the starting point? Gao Yan adjusted his sleeves and tidied his hair before asking the servant beside him, "How does this master look?" "Young master is distinguished and elegant, handsome and chic." The servant also said flattering words. Gao Yan proudly curled his lips and was about to get up and walk to the stage. Seeing this, Gao Jin grabbed him and asked, "What are you doing?" "Choosing," Gao Yan said. Gao Jin frowned. He was very clear about this younger brother of his. It was fine if he didn't have the ability to begin with, but he still loved to show off. Currently, historian advisor Jing's Fu was flourishing with each passing day. They absolutely could not allow any mishaps to occur at this time. Gao Jin asked, "What can you do?" These words were unpleasant to Gao Yan's ears. He and Gao Jin were biological brothers from the same mother, but when people talked about the Gao family, the first person they would praise was Gao Jin. Gao Jinsheng had delicate features, but he was rough and tanned. Gao Jinsheng was able to handle matters for his father at such a young age, but every time he wanted to talk to his father about court matters, his father would shake his head impatiently. As brothers, there was originally no discord between them, but because of the eyes of outsiders there was a gap. Gao Yan was already a little sensitive and inferior under his brother's light. Now that he heard Gao Jin's words, he was even more angry. He was originally a little hesitant about whether the manuscript was too well written, and whether it was too impressive. But now he didn't hesitate at all. He said in an unkind tone, "Big brother, although I'm not as smart as you, I'm not a complete idiot. You don't have to stop me. After all, I can't steal your limelight." Gao Jin heard the hidden meaning in Gao Yan's words and paused for a moment. Before he could speak, he saw Gao Yan push him away and walked up the stage. From afar, he shouted, "I choose policy theory." Policy theory? It wasn't that no one in Guangwentang recognized Gao Yan and naturally looked over. Speaking of which, it was strange. Gao Yan himself didn't have much ability, but in Guangwentang he was quite good. Because every time his homework and manuscripts were written by others, although he couldn't be considered a great talent, he was still considered outstanding. Chapter 50. Thus when he went up the stage like that, no one was surprised. This was because in the choose line what was shown were the best things that one had prepared. But policy theory was difficult. Thus the originally noisy crowd quietened down in an instant as everyone looked at the green-clad youth on the stage. The first few students who chose policy theory had already read out their own policies. However, it was not considered good. When Gao Yan went up, Gao Jing frowned. One did not expect that Gao Yan would dare to pick policy. Feng and Ning said curiously, "If it was Gao Jing, I would feel that it would be better." Shun Miao stopped the chess pieces in her hands and looked towards the stage. Once everything was prepared, Gao Yan took out a piece of paper and slowly read, "Law, the frame of a country, especially set on wood, supporting it to the heavens." He read in a cadence and the crowd's initial look of watching a bustling scene gradually disappeared, especially the masters and officials at the banquet as they looked seriously at the youth on the stage. Gao Jing's younger brother is indeed not bad. A flash of amazement appeared in Prince Zhou's eyes. This kind of policy theory, even the Darren in the court would not have such incisive views. It is indeed not bad. Prince Jing also nodded his head in praise. Moreover, this child is still young and in the future, he would definitely not be an ordinary person. Fu Xiaoyi quietly looked at the person on the stage. Even though there were no fluctuations in his expression, his fingers unconsciously twisted. His fingers unconsciously twirled. Whenever he had a thought or an idea, he would subconsciously do this action. Obviously Gao Yan's actions made him have a new plan in his heart. As for Pei Lang, ever since Gao Yan read the first sentence, his body stiffened. He did not know why, but he felt that Gao Yan's policy theory seemed familiar. But he had always had an outstanding memory, and after thinking about it carefully, he still could not make heads or tails of it. Most likely he had not seen it before. But this feeling of familiarity actually made him, who had always been calm, a little anxious. It was as if every sentence that Gao Yan read, he would be able to follow up with the next sentence. It was incomparably familiar, as if it was his own thing. Shun Miao smiled gently and no longer looked at the youth on the stage, but continued to look at the chess pieces on the chessboard. She casually picked a piece and placed it at the edge of the chessboard. "What kind of chess are you playing?" Feng and Ning asked, just randomly playing. Who would place the chess pieces so far away? Far. Shun Miao shook her head. Every chess piece had its own use. How far could this seemingly useless chess piece go? Even if it looked like it was still 108,000 miles away from the situation, it was still an indispensable part of the future general. Could he see it now? From a distant pavilion, one could see the entire scene on the stage from afar. Su Mingfeng waved his fan and said, "One do not know where did Gao Yan found this essay from, but it was written in an elegant and unrestrained manner. I would like to get to know the person who wrote this essay. So what if I know him?" The purple-clothed youth opposite him spoke lazily. His whole body was sitting in front of the window of the pavilion, leaning against it, almost half of his body was sticking out. It should be a knowledgeable Darren. Su Mingfeng did not think much of it. If one is able to make friends, one would definitely benefit a lot. Xie Jingxing sneered and turned his head to look at the stage as a begonia appeared in his hand. The crabapple blossoms had not yet withered, as if they had just been plucked, fresh and moving. They seemed to contain a quiet fragrance, but also seemed a little austere. Not necessarily. Chapter 51. On the stage, Gao Yan finally finished reciting the circulation of law. The surroundings were quiet before whispers started to discuss. The students did not understand the meaning of this treatise, and only knew that it quoted classics and was very gorgeous. But the Darren at the male side of the banquet understood the depth of it. This treatise looked casual, but it was able to point out the loophole in Ming-Chi's laws in one fell swoop, and ingeniously changed it to make up for it. For a student, it was somewhat inconceivable. The examiner on the stage did not expect that Gao Yan was really hiding his abilities. But the rules still had to be followed. Once one had doubts about the student's results, naturally one would have to test it first. Just like Shun Miao's painting previously. In all fairness, this circulation of law was more brilliant than Shun Miao's painting as it had both literary and practical qualities. The examiner then asked, just like what the treatise said, Ming-Chi's laws encompass a wide area. You said that there is a need to subdivide it. How do you subdivide it? Gao Yan's heart was delighted. Other than the circulation of law in the manuscript, there was another question that was exactly the same as what the examiner asked. He was very grateful to the person who wrote the manuscript for him and thought that in the future he would give more money as a reward. Therefore, he calmly puffed out his chest and raised his head, answering according to the script. There are 3 levels: the commercial path, the official path, and the civilian path. Below the stage, historian Jing Darren was already grinning from ear to ear. He was able to reach this stage in the officialdom because he relied on the Emperor's support and wide connections. But there was really no one with such ability. Luckily he had a good son, Gao Jing, who was able to help him deal with many things at a young age. Now that his second son, Gao Yan, had displayed such extraordinary abilities, he had to return to the ancestral hall to burn 2 joss sticks and pray for his ancestors. Gao Jing was smarter than his father, but he did not believe that his own younger brother would have such wisdom. Facing the examiner's questions, he was able to speak with assurance and composure. One could not possibly even bribe the examiner. Thus he could not make up his mind. Pei Lang picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip. His hands were still slightly trembling. He did not know why, but every word that Gao Yan said seemed to be imprinted in his mind. That kind of familiar feeling made him feel ridiculous, and the anxiety in his heart could not be calmed. Su Ming Lang had just dozed off and saw that the people around him were looking at Gao Yan on the stage with an expression of appreciation. She simply tugged on Lord Su's sleeve and asked, "Father, is what he said good?" "A young talent," Father Su said directly. Su Ming Lang pursed his lips and seemed to be unable to understand. After looking around and not seeing Su Mingfeng's figure, he asked, "Why is older brother not back yet?" Old Master Su coughed softly. "Your big brother's body is weak now. He was forced to come today. Let him rest a little longer." Fu Xiaoyi heard the movements over here and glanced at Master Su. Seeing that Master Su's expression did not change when he mentioned Su Mingfeng, he then withdrew his gaze thoughtfully. No matter what, Gao Yan's battle today was extremely beautiful. He was able to deal with the examiner's questions with ease, dispelling the doubts in everyone's hearts. Without any explanation, he naturally obtained the first rank. The ranking was secondary. In the future, when Warden Jing was mentioned apart from Gao Jin, everyone would also know that he had a young and talented second son. Gao Yin got off the stage proudly. This round of selection ended and the female group selection also began. Feng and Ning did not go up the stage. She was already outstanding in the Qin category, and just now she had already drawn the Qin category. Since the other items were not outstanding, there was no need for her to go up the stage. Shen Qing chose chess. She was good at chess, and chess also needed to be calculated, so she was considered to have some expertise. As expected, Shen Yu chose Qin. Chapter 52. Shen Yu had always loved these things that could make her seem out of this world. Because Chun Roqiu was originally good at playing the zither, not only did she know how to play it, she also knew how to compose some songs and write some lyrics. Shen Yu had learned this skill very well. Every year she would be able to get first rank, thus every year here, it was the time for everyone to appreciate her zither skills. In the female group, once Shen Yu was there, the others would not choose the zither category to seek their own humiliation. Shen Qing naturally put an effort, and in the chess category she got first rank. After going around and around to the zither category, The audience started to discuss again. Shunyu walked up the stage and burned incense and bathed her hands. She was born with a delicate and graceful air, and her soft pink robe was extremely moving. But with a shallow smile on her lips, she really had the appearance of a little fairy. She was playing Chant to the Moon. Chant to the Moon was an extremely difficult song, and it was about a wanderer far away who missed his homeland and loved ones. The beginning was gentle and melancholy, followed by intense sorrow, and at the end it made one sigh. The transition from start to finish was a test of zither skills, and it was emotional. In the previous lifetime, Shunyu was also in the limelight of this song, and was unparalleled for a while. In comparison, she was even more unbearable. Now thinking about it, it seemed that every time Shunyu's good reputation was to step on Shun Miao's embarrassment to climb up. Shun Miao looked at the young female on the stage. Shunyu had already started. When she plucked the zither strings, it was as if the zither strings had spirituality as it spread softly in her hands. The song was ethereal and had a charm that drifted into everyone's ears. Her fingers flew on the zither strings like a butterfly shuttling through a sea of flowers. Every turn was coordinated and natural. Feng and Ning bit her lips. Even if she did not like Shunyu, she had to admit that Shunyu's zither skills were outstanding. In comparison, the song that she got first rank just now was really clumsy. That was a song of longing for one's loved ones and homeland, but it made Shun Miao's fists gradually clench. Even if one were to relive a lifetime, the dead could not be resurrected. Wan Yu and Fu Ming would not appear again. This song of Shun Yu's was like a death knell of vengeance and resentment. In the ears of those who heard it, not only was there no comfort, it was filled with blood hatred. Kai Lin ran out of the banquet. He tried his best to get closer to the stage, so that he could see every expression of his sweetheart. He was intoxicated by the beautiful sound of the zither, but was suddenly interrupted by the sound of someone talking. The second young lady is really unlucky. She has never been the second place, but the fifth young lady took the first place. The one who spoke was a slender maid, and Kai Lin recognized that she was Shun Yu's personal maid, Shu Xiang, and involuntarily looked over. That's right. Moreover, the fifth young lady doesn't even choose. She is deliberately going against the second young lady. Another maid said, "Alas, it's a pity that our second young lady has a kind heart and has been bullied by fifth young lady in private. Didn't the fifth young lady dare to treat the second young lady like this because of the first master? Second young lady is so pitiful. She had prepared for so long, but the fruit was snatched away by someone else. It would be great if someone could help the second young lady vent her anger. For example, let the fifth young lady go on stage during the selection? What nonsense are you talking about?" Shu Xiang interrupted her words. Everyone knows that the fifth young lady is not proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. Picking the fifth young lady, isn't it lowering one's own status? I think it is impossible for the female group. If the male group were to pick her, that would be helping the fifth young lady to vent her anger. The voices of the conversation gradually became softer. Kai Lin's eyes moved as he looked at Shunyu on the stage and had an idea in his heart. Chapter 53. Shunyu's song ended and everyone listened as if they were intoxicated. A female with outstanding zither skills would be loved by everyone, especially when this female's looks were not bad. At least in the male side of the banquet, not to mention that the grade 1 children were too young, there were quite a number of grade 2 and grade 3 youths that were looking over here. Even though in Guangwentang, Qin Qing's appearance was a level higher, but Qin Qing's temperament was arrogant, and how could it be compared to Shunyu's gentleness? "This younger sister of yours plays really well," Feng and Ning reluctantly said. "One do not know where did the zither master was invited from. Tomorrow I will ask mother to help me find a famous zither master to teach." It was the time when one was young and loved to be competitive. Just like when Shun Miao was just appointed as Empress, she was relaxed about everything, but Fu Xiuyi's heart was tightly controlled. As long as Fu Xiuyi was slightly good to other females, she would be extremely worried. The inner palace was the most troublesome, and would privately trip others up and stab others in the back. She had the temperament to immediately get back after suffering a loss, and thus offended a lot of people. Now this temperament did not change at all, but there was no need to hurt herself. Speaking of which, Second young lady of the Shen family is a rare beauty and talent. Everyone loved beauty and Prince Zhou was also amazed by Xin Yu. He only said, "It is a pity." Others might not understand what was a pity, but it was impossible for the few princes to not understand. Xin Yu was born with a delicate beauty and infinite talent. If there was such a beautiful and understanding person by one's side, perhaps it would be a great thing in the world. Unfortunately, she did not crawl out from Shen foreign stomach, and was not the daughter of the first household of the Shen family but the third household. Unfortunately, Shen Xian, who held the military power in his hands, gave birth to an idiot like Shen Miao. Even if she looked different today, how could one's impression be changed overnight? They believed that Shen Miao's propriety today was because there was someone guiding her from behind, and her heart was still that idiot who did not know anything. After Gao Yin stepped down from the stage, Pei Lang's mood gradually calmed down. It was the first time in his life that he encountered such a situation. Even though he was puzzled, he tried his best to reassure himself. At this moment, when she heard Prince Zhou's words, she could not help but look at the purple-clad young lady on the opposite side of the female side of the banquet. She held the chess piece and tilted her head as she pondered. It was too far and one could not see her gaze clearly, but one could feel the scrutiny and deep meaning in that gaze, just like when Shen Miao looked at him. How could such a person be an idiot? But people would not change overnight. Could it be that Shen Miao's previous stupidity was all an act? Why was that so? As smart as he was, he couldn't figure out what was going on. The female group selection ended with Shan Yu singing to the moon. Xin Yu naturally took the first rank, but the herd today was not happy because of this but felt somewhat embarrassed. She looked at Shen Miao, but Shen Miao was engrossed in the chess game and did not look at her at all. Xin Yu knew that Shen Miao was not proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. Thus naturally she would not be able to understand that chess game. Now that she was looking at it seriously, it was only to deliberately give her face. Chen Roqiu noticed her expression and reminded her softly, "Yuanyang, you have forgotten yourself." Chen Roqiu requested her daughter to be calm and composed no matter what situation or what happened. No matter if one was really calm or pretending, one must let others see a calm side. Once a female was calm, their temperament would be superior and flustered would not be the bearing of an aristocratic family. In all fairness, Chen Roqiu's way of teaching her children was indeed not bad, and she herself also did a good job. Unfortunately, Shen Yu was after all young and had never experienced failure before, thus did not know how to endure. Hearing Chen Roqiu's reminder, Shen Yu slightly put away the anger on her face. The maid by her side, Xu Xiang, handed her tea. "Young lady should drink some tea to moisten your throat." Shen Yu took the tea and looked at Xu Xiang. Xu Xiang smiled at her and Shen Yu understood in her heart, and the smile on her face became more real. She said, "It is somewhat hot. I am very interested in the selection later." Because Shen Qing had just obtained the first place in the chess competition, her mood became a bit better. She said with a smile, "This year there will be no division between the male and female groups, nor will there be any division between the second and third countries. The competition will definitely be more intense." Originally, the selection was the one that people looked forward to the most out of the three. Because the drawing would not necessarily draw the best and the selection was to choose the best performance. Then the selection would always happen between the two most outstanding people. The selection in the female group was not very intense because the females would always be amiable on the surface and also show that they did not care about the results and had an indifferent attitude. But males were different. Youths liked to use the method of comparison to determine victory and defeat. At this age, the desire for victory and defeat was the strongest, so the selection every year would be the most intense. This year's selection did not differentiate between male and female, second or third countries, and all the students could compete together. As long as one wanted to challenge someone, naturally one would be able to compete with that person. But even though it was said like this, there would not be any challenges between males and females. As expected, there was no one challenging the literary category this year, and the highlight naturally fell on the martial category. This almost cut off the possibility of females participating. Even though there was no lack of daughters from military families who knew martial arts, but females as compared to males, their strength was much worse and naturally it was impossible for them to succeed. At the males' banquet, Kai Lin was the first to stand up and walk up to the stage. The examiner asked him what was the challenge and he pointed to the bamboo stick for archery and said, "Archery?" Everyone understood. Kai Lin, this little tyrant, did not know anything about the literary category, but he was considered outstanding in the martial category, among which archery was the most outstanding. Naturally, his archery was top-notch and he had obtained the first rank in archery in last year's academy examinations. Who was the one that he wanted to challenge today? Looking at the entire audience, there was no one that was more outstanding than him in archery. Kai Lin raised his neck and suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the female side of the banquet. When everyone saw that he was pointing at the female side of the banquet and not the male side of the banquet, they were surprised, and when they saw who he was pointing at, they opened their mouths in astonishment and even stopped their discussions. He deliberately said loudly, "I want to challenge her, Shun Miao." That purple-clad young female who was immersed in the chess game raised her head and looked at the person on the stage with clear and sharp eyes. Her expression did not fluctuate and her actions did not make any mistakes, as if this earth-shattering sentence was just a casual greeting, and she did not even bother to reply. Chun Roqiu frowned. She wholeheartedly taught Xinyu, but Shun Miao seemed to have learnt to remain calm. In a distant pavilion, the handsome youth who was leisurely drinking tea sprayed out a mouthful of tea and a trace of surprise appeared on his frivolous expression. "Is the Kai family's boy crazy?" Xin Miao stood up. In the chess game on the table, there was a black chess piece that crossed the boundary and was heading towards her. The first pawn was dispatched. She picked up the white chess piece and swallowed the black chess piece before throwing it into the chess basket. "Receive," she said.